Housing Authority versus City of Albany lawsuit. No decisions were made, and it was just an informative discussion to bring us up to speed. So with that, we can begin the meeting on the open agenda, and I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And Commissioner Pilch will be here in a second. All right.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. And can we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Eisen?
Here.
Commissioner Moss?
Here.
Commissioner Pilch?
Here.
Chair Donaldson?
Here.
And Commissioner Arkin is absent this evening.
Okay. All right. Okay, the next thing is the consent calendar. On the consent calendar tonight, we have 3 items. We have the minutes from October 9th. We have the project at 833 Solano Avenue, which is a new single-family home construction. And we have a project at 920 Carmel, which is a second-story addition. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to pull or have discussion on any of these items? There is, okay. And what item would you like to pull and discuss separately? 833 Solano, okay, that's been pulled from the consent calendar. Is there anyone else from the audience who wants to pull an item? Not seeing anyone. Any commissioners? Pardon me? Oh, that's on the agenda for later, and that'll come later in the evening. This is for the consent calendar only, okay? Anyone else on the commission that would like to pull an item on the consent calendar? All right, the consent calendar then is left with the minutes from October 9th and the project at 920 Carmel. Do I have a motion?
I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
Wait, you're recused on
I was
Carmel.
going to get there, except for Carmel, which I have to recuse myself on. So we may pull that off. I'm gonna
Okay.
do this.
Okay, let's see.
Maybe I could,
Why don't you move then?
just for item C, I move approval of 920 Carmel Avenue, second story addition, PA 13-080.
I'll second.
Okay, let's vote on, is there a motion for the minutes yet? We'll do that separately then.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you want to include the
I will
minutes?
also include the minutes in my,
Okay, so you're moving approval of the entire consent calendar, all right?
yes.
Is there a, let's see, okay, we have a second?
Yes.
We have a second, all right. All in favor of approving the consent calendar, say aye.
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 And
And the record's going to reflect that I recuse myself.
Commissioner Moss has recused
Carmel.
himself from 920's Carmel because he's within 500 feet. Okay, which means that the minutes have been approved and the project at 920 Carmel has been approved. So if you're here for that item, you should understand that there's a 14-day appeal period. Otherwise, your project is good to go, and it has been approved. All right. Now, the next item then is 833 Solano. That is on our consent calendar, and it has been pulled, so I think we'll hear it as we will another item. Let's see, should I call for a staff report on that? Then,
Certainly, I can give you an abbreviated staff report.
Sure.
You looked at this project as a study session item at your last meeting on January 22nd. The request is for a design review approval for a new 2-story single-family home at the subject location. The lot is 3,750 square feet. It has an existing home which is proposed to be demolished as part of the project. The new home will include 3 bedrooms and 2.5 bathrooms, a 2-car garage, and roof decks. And altogether, it will be a little over 2,000 square feet and 25 feet in height. That's kind of brief synopsis of that. If you want more detail, I'm happy to provide it, but perhaps.
I think that's sufficient. Are there any questions of staff? You want her to cover any other details specifically?
It was unclear to me if there were any changes since we last reviewed this.
There was a slight modification. At the last discussion, Commissioner Moss had indicated to the applicant that there could potentially be an issue with driveway slope, and so as a result, he's increased the height of the home to 27 feet to mitigate the driveway slope issue. He also moved the house back by a foot to not block the next-door neighbor's kitchen window view.
Is the applicant for this project here present tonight? Okay, and you had asked to appeal the item. Why don't you come up then and talk about why you wanted to appeal the item and what your considerations are? Yes, take the microphone. Mm-hmm.
So my only question is,
Introduce yourself. We need your name for the record.
Daniel Gregory. I live next door. I'm at 831 Solano.
831.
And
okay.
I just haven't been to anything up to this point to know where things were at. And I just, the question I have is that so the gentleman that bought this property, at one point, sort of informally, and I don't really know if this is the right place to address this, but he essentially said that he owned everything all the way up to my actual house. And so I didn't know if included in these plans, he's planning on essentially treating, so there's a fence there right now between us. And so there's about, my house is very close to the fence, but he sort of in passing one day was like, oh yeah, I own basically onto your property. And so we were just like, okay, are you gonna build, how close are you going to try to build to the property? So I guess that's just my curiosity. I don't know if that's something that has been brought up. I didn't do like a formal study of my property to see exactly where it is, or if it's different than what he said it was.
So you're at 8?
I'm at 831, so I'm
31.
just west of this property.
Okay.
Well, on one side at the front, you have a 0.2 feet clearance from your property to the property line, from your house to the property line.
0.2 feet.
Yeah.
Wow.
However, the new project at 833 is calling for a 4-foot wide side yard setback. So
Okay.
he wouldn't be building up to the property line.
Okay.
And we require.
I figured that.
We require, that's the side yard, and I believe he's conforming, and meeting our side yard requirement, our current side yard requirement. Yeah.
Okay.
I think your question is where's the property line? And there was a
I guess so,
survey
yeah.
prepared. If you were to go to the Albany website and pull up the drawings for this project, they're included there, and you could see where the
Okay.
surveyor located. It does look like it's on the other side of the fence, according to the survey. And you could always have another surveyor come and confirm this.
Sure.
Or potentially set up an appointment with this surveyor to come and explain their findings here.
Okay.
But I think that would be worth you taking a look at this drawing.
Sure. Can I ask one more short question? So the neighbors to the east, to me at least, expressed a lot of concern about their view. I know things had been changed. Is that something that also has already been addressed and I missed it? And I apologize if I'm making you all backtrack, but they were concerned, because the thing that he's built certainly goes much higher than where they currently are.
Yeah.
Was there discussion and a resolution based on whether this might affect those uphill neighbors? And it was resolved?
Yeah, I spoke with the applicant last week, and what he explained is that when he installed the story poles, he realized that where he had located that front wall would actually obstruct into the neighbor's kitchen window. So he decided to move that wall back, I think by a foot, and he provided a revised exhibit that shows the new wall placement will not obstruct her.
Okay. Thanks. Those were my curiosities.
And I believe the plans now called the new home, the replacement home, the new home would be built quite a bit farther back on the lot than where the current house is.
Gotcha. Okay, I'll take a look at those drawings
That
too.
in part is to ameliorate the view impacts from the uphill neighbor.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Sure. Okay. And anyone else who wants to address the commission on this item? Okay, hearing no one, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for any further discussion or motions. Any thoughts, any comments?
No thoughts, just the staff minor modifications since previous review.
Yeah, and those modifications comply with the code, and I think, in speaking with the applicant, he listened to the commission at the last hearing, particularly on the driveway slope issue, so.
Right.
Looks that way to me.
Yeah, no further
All right,
comments or
motion,
questions.
please.
Okay, I move approval of planning application 13-040833 Solano Avenue, use single-family construction.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? No one opposed. All right, that project has been approved then. 833 Solano has been approved. Again, there's a 14-day appeal period, after which time our decision becomes final, if no one appeals. All right, thank you very much. Now we'll move beyond the consent calendar into the new business part of our agenda, and I think the first item we have is item A, general plan housing element update. I'll start with staff. Barry?
Good evening, Commissioners. We have a short presentation for you this evening. This is a public hearing item on the draft Albany housing element, and I'll walk through this presentation rather quickly, since at this point the Commission has had 5 study sessions in 2013 and January 2014 on this topic, so you're all familiar with the project. But for the benefit of those who are in the audience or maybe watching this at home, this is an element of the Albany General Plan, one of the mandatory elements. Every city and county in California is required to adopt a housing element as part of its general plan. The contents of the housing element are set by the state government code, and this is the one chapter of the general plan or part of the general plan that is subject to certification by a state agency. In this case, the element gets submitted to the State Department of Housing and Community Development, who reviews it against the government code requirements and then makes a determination of whether the city is in compliance. One of the metrics for determining compliance is whether the city demonstrates that it has the capacity to meet its fair share of the region's housing needs. And so much of the element is oriented toward demonstrating that Albany has the capacity, both through its land, through its regulations, through its policies, to accommodate all types of housing, affordable housing included. One important point is that this draft that's before you this evening actually covers the period 2007 to 2014. Most of that period is already behind us, so we're actually focusing this element on actions to be taken during 2014. This does look back at accomplishments over the past 6 years as well, but this will be updated again later in 2014 to cover the next planning period, which is 2015 to actually January 15th, 2023 is the end of the next planning period. The element itself includes several chapters. There's an evaluation of the last housing element, which in this case was 1992, a needs assessment, which looks at demographic and housing data, and a sites analysis, which examines possible locations where housing can be constructed in the community, a constraints analysis, which looks at both government constraints and non-government constraints, such as financing and the real estate market to housing construction, and then finally goals, policies, and specific actions for the future on housing. The timeline, this project has been going on for a while. Actually, it says 2008, but I believe the first study session on this was in 2007, which was at the beginning of the planning period. There were a number of study sessions in 2008 and 2009, and a draft was submitted to the state in 2009 with comments received back in October. That was a partial draft, and because of other priorities and staff considerations, the element was started again in May of 2013. And a second draft was completed in October 2013. There were 4 study sessions that were held by this commission
in May and October, September and October. There was also a town meeting on October 1st. The commission forwarded the draft to the council on the 15th, and the council authorized submission of the document to the state on October 21st. We did receive a letter from the state HCD on December 26th indicating some specific changes that they wanted to see the city make to the document before they would certify it. We brought those changes to you on January 22nd and did submit those to the state, and we're awaiting a word from them on whether those changes are sufficient. We believe that at this point we've met the requirements for a certified element. You can see here that on January 31st, we published a consolidated document which merged the edits that the commission considered with the original draft from October. The initial study and mitigated negative declaration, which is the CEQA document for this project, was also published on that date, and the review period for that will run through February 21st. This is the Planning Commission hearing on this item. We are asking for recommendation this evening, and there will be a council hearing on March 3rd. Again, the regional housing needs allocation is important to this process. These are the, that's RHNA is the acronym for that. These are the RHNA numbers for Albany for the current planning period. The emphasis here is on demonstrating that the city has the capacity to accommodate the low and very low income portion of this assignment. The private market does pretty good accommodating the above moderate income demand and the moderate income demand, but the focus is really on that 43 low income and 64 very low income units. As I mentioned, one of the chapters of the element is an inventory of possible housing sites in the city. The city has identified the potential for 170 units at densities of 20 units per acre or greater, and 189 units, much of which is in a single project at densities of 20 units per acre or less, or that are otherwise expected to be market rate projects. So what you can see on the left here is that the capacity that we've identified exceeds the adjusted regional housing needs allocation for low and very low income households. The element itself includes 5 broad goals, and under each of these goals there are a series of policies and actions. The first goal really deals with conserving our existing housing stock. The second goal is about producing new housing at a variety of densities and price points. Third is looking specifically at special needs populations in the city, seniors, homeless, disabled, and so forth, and providing specific policies and actions addressing those populations. The fourth looks at reducing constraints to production, and finally, equal access, which really deals with our fair housing and reasonable accommodation policies. I won't go through all of these in detail. These are the primary comments that HCD had on the October draft. As I mentioned, in January, we came to you with some specific revisions, about a 15-page addendum to the October draft, which responded to their comments, further demonstrating the adequacy of the city's sites, and then adding some specific data that was requested of the city. Since that meeting in January, the SB2 ordinance, which the Commission considered in December, is now effective. I mentioned the consolidated housing element has been produced, and the initial study and draft mitigated negative declaration are in circulation now. We have submitted the edits to HCD and are awaiting word from them on their acceptability. In terms of the initial study, the housing element is a general plan amendment, and it is defined as a project under CEQA. I do want to emphasize there are no land use map or zoning map changes proposed, so the impacts are principally related to the consequences of incentivizing and encouraging housing on sites that currently have commercial or mixed-use zoning. So the initial study looks at the effects of build-out of those sites with commercial uses versus a mix of residential and commercial uses. These are specifically on the San Pablo commercial and Solano commercial sites. And the initial study identified potential air quality and hydrology impacts associated with new development, and has identified some standard conditions of approval that would apply to development on housing sites. These are fairly typical and would be applied to most multifamily development in the city in any event. The last slide really looks at some of the key actions. I think we've really focused in previous presentations on what was in the element, but haven't actually put on a single slide the main actions that will happen after this housing element is adopted. So there are a series of zoning changes that will move to the Planning Commission later in 2014, and then on to the City Council, establishing minimum densities, clarifying the parking requirements for second units, eliminating use permit requirement for multifamily in the R4, which is the residential tower district, and consideration of ground floor retail with a use permit in San Pablo Commercial. The city's also called for additional public information and outreach to residents, to commercial property owners on both San Pablo and Solano, and also to the nonprofit development community. There's a policy to reduce fees for affordable housing that will be formalized, a survey of second units in the city that will be done over the summer, specifically looking at rents, an affordable housing fund that will be created, and lot consolidation procedures, which are currently in effect, will be formalized. We're not changing the lot consolidation procedures, but rather making them official and formalizing them as a way of encouraging parcels on Solano that are in, or San Pablo and Solano that are in common ownership to be merged so that they're more viable development sites. Tonight, what we're asking is that you accept public comment on this draft and that you consider two resolutions. Resolution 2014-01 would recommend council approval of the mitigated negative declaration, and Resolution 2402 would recommend council adoption of the 2007 to 2014 housing element. And I'm available to answer questions. Thank you.
Any questions?
None?
No questions right now? All right. Then I'd like to open the public hearing. I think there's two considerations here. One is we have to consider the initial study on the mitigated neg deck, and then we have to consider the substance of the housing element. I think I'd like to do that in two parts so we don't leave anything out. Maybe I'll start out by asking if anyone would like to address the commission on the mitigated neg deck on the initial study and talk about the CEQA document first and get any comments on that. It is in circulation right now, and written comments can be submitted up and through February 22nd. But if there's anyone who'd like to make any comments on the initial study, this is the time to do that. I don't see anyone. So we'll bring that back to the commission, but let's do the public hearing first on the housing element, and then we can address both of those at the commission level too. Okay?
And as a general reminder, there are speaker cards at the back.
Oh, yeah.
Of the room.
Yeah, we'd like to have you do speaker cards so that we can get your name and name correct and all for the record. Okay. Is there anyone like to address the commission on the housing element and the revised housing element, our fifth meeting on the housing element? Mr. Fields.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ed Fields, Albany resident. I want to speak to two aspects. I hope I can do it in 3 minutes, unless I have to talk really fast or something. But the main issue I want to speak to has to do with what Barry put on the slide. Said, consider allowing ground floor residential with a use permit in San Pablo Commercial. And on his slide, he didn't mention anything with relation to affordable housing, which is a little different than what's in the draft before you. So we want affordable housing to be part of every multifamily project in Albany, at least over a certain minimum size. And if we allow residential on the ground floor on San Pablo Avenue, if you have affordable housing, then we could end up with residential on the ground floor in every new development on San Pablo Avenue, depending on what developers choose to build. So I think you need to look carefully at the language that's in this housing element. Because if the housing element is approved, then you, the Planning and Zoning Commission, will be tasked with amending the zoning code to be in accord with the housing element, which is part of the general plan.
Yeah.
So the discussion about what San Pablo Avenue should look like needs to take place now, before you put this in the general plan, unless you put it in the general plan with language that says consider. So if you give me, I probably can't do it in a minute and a half, but you know, on page 5.9 it says The intent is to create retail frontage along commercial streets and to ensure that the city retains sufficient space to meet the shopping, dining, and service needs of Albany residents. That's on page 5.9. Page 512 to 13 says clearer and more quantifiable standards for mixed-use development along the San Pablo corridor also would be helpful, yes. Page 521 cites the San Pablo design guidelines adopted in 1993. They strive to enhance San Pablo Avenue as a great retail street oriented toward pedestrians and ground-level activity. Guidelines strongly support the concept of mixed-use development with housing on the upper floors. Then you go over to Program 4D on page 625 and 626, and that's where my concern is. It says this action will also include provisions to waive, reduce, or otherwise modify the ground floor commercial requirement for projects on San Pablo Avenue which include affordable units. It doesn't say consider, it says will include provisions. So all I'm saying is if, what's the vision for San Pablo Avenue, it could be reduced to that sentence. Once we put it in the general plan, you'll have to change the zoning code. So I realize we haven't specifically said what it is, but I've seen it different ways. So I urge you to consider that. The other comment that I want to make is very brief, and on page 516, there's a recitation of your recommendation. It says, in response to public input and their own deliberations, the Planning and Zoning Commission modified staff's recommendation, this is about emergency shelters, and advised the City Council to endorse the CMX provisions but also remove the use permit requirement in the SPC zone. And is left out from that recitation of your recommendation the fact that you also recommended allowing emergency shelters in Solano Commercial and R3 district with a use permit. So, it's like we're rewriting history and saying this was your recommendation when it was only part of your recommendation. The City Council didn't agree with that part of your recommendation. I understand that. Thank you.
What page are you on for that? I missed that reference.
That is on page 516.
516, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, great. Anyone else like to address the commission on the housing element revisions? See anyone right now? Okay. I will close the public hearing then on both the housing element and the initial study and bring it back to the commission. Where should we start? Anyone want to start here? Anything?
My comments are pretty mild, so I feel like I could jump in. And I'm very impressed that we were able to pull this together in the time frame, and I feel like there's a lot of good intent here, and I'm happy that this is going to be the springboard that will allow us to kind of keep moving into our next housing element. So that's pretty much all I have to say.
All right. Anyone else? Nick, anything?
I don't think I have any comments at this time. We reviewed this previously, so ready to move forward.
Yeah, I concur. I don't have any additional comments that
Okay.
already made.
All right. Did review the initial study pretty carefully, and I have couple comments on it that I think might entail some changes that at least consider them as comments, and so probably air quality. There are a couple of mitigation measures in that section, and I had issues with two of them. The first one, mitigation measure Air 1, basically implements the Bay Area Air Quality District's control measures for construction and dust control during construction. The housing element doesn't involve any construction by itself. The project here does not trigger any construction of any buildings, and dust control measures are not going to be required directly by the housing element, and furthermore, new development or new projects that might come out or that might be an indirect result of the housing element would have their own CEQA review. So I had trouble dealing with that mitigation measure in here, I don't think that it's appropriate. And I don't think there would be any construction impacts that would trigger air quality district construction mitigation. So I think the proper response to question B on the checklist under air quality would be one that would talk about how there wouldn't be any construction directly triggered by this, and therefore the standard dust control measures during construction would not be necessary or are not included in this document, but that they would be included in the future if projects are on a project-by-project basis that does enable construction. And I think that's important because these measures could change in the future. And I would hate to see this mitigation measure stuck in type in our housing element, and then in 4 or 5 years from now, have the air district have a different kind or different set of air quality mitigations that we would then apply to future projects. So,
I was just going to say on that, what I've run into is not necessarily dust. It's the running of construction equipment all day long, and the exhaust that
it's
that
not
has.
dust only, it's actually particulate matter. So
Right.
it deals with running, time running construction, so diesel exhaust and that sort of thing, yeah. It is, that's correct. Similarly, mitigation measure error 2, I mean, it's appropriate in here. I don't have a problem with it. It has to do with toxic air contaminants. But I would not reference figure 3 in this document. I would do something, say, project applicants proposing residential development, including emergency shelters within 1,000 feet of major sources of toxic air contaminants. And then I would strike the last phrase and say, identified pursuant to Bay Area air quality management criteria and records. I did that in part because those records are updated all the time, and we should have a way of triggering the most current records when this is done. And also because I have some problems with figure 3. For one, the first thing I saw is that it showed a toxic air contaminant source in my backyard neighbor's yard. But I think it has to do with the high school and the boiler facilities or the emergency generator at the high school. So I think that dot is misplaced. And then I also think that the graphic should be fixed up before this goes to council with some of the high-volume roadways. There looks to me like that it shows key route between Solano and Marin, and I think it should be Masonic between Solano and Marin. That might carry 10,000 cars a day. I don't know. And then Marin Avenue, I think the label Marin Avenue covered over the color, because I think Marin Avenue carries enough traffic to meet that criteria all the time. And so there's two suspicious points there on figure 3. So I would urge staff to take those suggestions under consideration and consider them as comments on the initial study and make corrections as appropriate when you take this document to the council. All right. With respect to the housing element, I looked at all of the changes that Barry had done and read the letter from HCD, and I can see that he's made a valiant attempt to directly respond to their comments with text changes, and I think that's appropriate. And I think Barry's, you've done a very good job with this, and I'm ready to move it forward. So, hearing no other any other comments from the commissions, there are 2 documents. In order to move this forward, we have 2 documents that are draft resolutions that would have to be approved. One would be a resolution 2014-01 for that probably approves the mitigated neg deck and the initial study, or recommends approval. And I would say recommends approval with suggestions and as it responds to comments that we received after the comment period closes. And then the second resolution is 2014-02, which would recommend adoption or have this commission recommend adoption of the housing element as to the city council. Any further comments or any motions?
Okay, I'll move, I'd like to move Resolution 2014-01 on the mitigated negative deck as in our reports and findings.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, 4 ayes. And another motion, please.
I'd like to move approval of Resolution 2014-02 on the housing element to the City Council.
Okay, is there a second?
Second that.
Okay, Nick seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? No one opposed. It passes 4 to nothing. And so with that, we have recommended approval of the 2007-2014 housing element. And in another month or two, we'll begin work on the next one. All right. Thank you very much, Barry. That's great. A good job, and we appreciate all the work you've had to put in on this in the last few months to get it moving forward and respond to the HCD comments. It's good. All right. Moving on. Where are we here? The next project, am I right, is item C of new business, and that is 1502 Posen. Is that right? Item B, I think. Do I have that right?
It's
No.
714D.
Wait a minute, hang on. Look at my agenda. What do we have here? General plan. Wait a minute. Oh, so Gateview, huh? A, it's item A. Okay, I'm page off. So the first item of public hearings here on new items is item A, 714 Gateview addition. Is there a staff report, please?
Before you this evening is a request for a design review and a parking reduction for a new addition at 714 Gateview Avenue. The existing home is 1,074 square feet with 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. The home was built in 1940, and the lot area is just under 3,700 square feet. The applicant is proposing to add a 988 square foot addition. This will include a lower level addition of 494 square feet, which will accommodate 4 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a storage area. The applicant is proposing an upper level addition, also 494 square feet, which will expand the kitchen and create a master suite addition on that upper level. Altogether, this will result in a 5-bedroom, 2.5-bath home, 1,919 square feet in area. The new height of the home will be 24 feet, and the FAR is proposed to increase to 0.52. There's also a 2-level deck, which is proposed at the rear of the home. The house is served by a single-car garage, which is 268 square feet, and is proposed to remain unchanged. Due to the size of the application request, the applicant has applied for a parking reduction for 1 off-street parking space. The existing home is somewhat of a cottage style, and the addition has been designed to match with that. Currently the house has a hipped roof. You can see the proposed elevations here on the screen. and there is lap siding that's proposed in the addition area. Here are the proposed decks. And then this is the view from the rear of the home. The applicants and project architect are here this evening, and I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that you might have.
All right.
The staff,
Questions of staff?
I'm sorry. Numbers aren't adding up a little bit because in the staff report, they're a little bit different than what you mentioned. So, unless I'm looking at the wrong application.
Actually, I am noticing that I have the wrong lot area on here, which
Yeah.
may be adding to the confusion.
Okay, because that's 53% lot coverage on the matrix in the report.
Yes.
And
Yeah, I see what I did. Yeah, it's 53%. There's a typo in there.
so it is 53%, and 50% is allowed. Is that correct?
Let me pull up the plans.
Okay.
It may have confused FAR with the FAR and the lot coverage. I believe the FAR is at
Yeah,
0.53. Lot coverage is limited to 50%.
Okay, I'm just wondering, because,
Good catch. So I think that's that's FAR. Yeah,
well, it's
yeah, good catch.
easy enough to figure out.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions of staff?
Well, again, I guess we're going to have to work this out to see if this 52% on the lot coverage where 50% is allowed.
You think that's FAR?
FAR is 53%, 55, so it doesn't make sense that FAR and lot coverage should be that close together if you're building over the second story, or building over the first story. The reason I'm questioning this is that we reference the report in our findings, and so.
In looking at the application, the applicant identified the overall footprint at 1,400 square feet, which is under 50%. So the maximum, if it was a 0.5, it would have to be a little over 1,800 square feet. 1,844 would result in 50% lot coverage, and the footprint that's identified is less than that.
Okay, so we'll ignore the matrix for now.
That's a good catch, okay.
With this new system, I'll be honest, it's harder for me to switch from between the plans and the staff report, so I don't have hard copies in front of me.
Okay. Any other questions of staff? All right. We'll start out open the public hearing by asking the applicant or the applicant's representative if they'd like to come forward and present the project, talk about the project. If you could, that'd be great.
Yeah, 37%.
The lot coverage is 37%, goes up from 35,
37.9.
from 35% roughly to 37.9.
That's the lot coverage.
Yeah,
And the
that's-
FAR is
Sounds right.
a little bit less than 52%.
Right,
So I think the allowable on the lot coverage is 50%.
that's correct.
So it's well under.
Yeah.
Basically, we're just trying to keep the house consistent, the addition consistent with the existing house. Talk in here. Okay, can't. The house basically is just an extension, the addition is just an extension of the existing house. Tried to consider the views from the neighbors, and we're not exceeding the footprint of the neighbors. In fact, we're back from that. We're not exceeding the setbacks on either side, and we're well under the rear allowable setback. Allowable is 20 feet, we're 35 feet.
Right.
So the only real variance that we're asking for, I don't know if it's designated a variance, but it's the parking, and there's nothing much we can do about the fact that the house was built very, relatively close to the street, because all of those houses are on that area, and we're consistent with the rest of the block in terms of setback. There is a fairly decent-sized garage, but it's not quite big enough for 2 cars. It's deep, but you can't put 2 cars in there. But you could put a lot of bicycles and everything else in there, so. There's a porch, which is also consistent with the design of most of the houses on that block. And that's the entry porch. The height of the house is still well below the allowable height. The height is, I believe, 24 feet. I think we're allowed 28. I'm trying to remember all these.
That's correct.
And the decks were there to begin with. The original house had a deck. So we're just actually, I think we made it a little bit smaller. It doesn't go out quite as far as the original deck did. And the lower deck is more of a landing. It is an extended landing for the raised ground floor is not quite at grade. So we put a deck in there which acts as a landing when you come down from the first deck. I don't know what else to.
Okay. On the siding and part of the new addition, not all of it, you're changing a different material. It looks like wood lap siding, whereas the existing building is stucco. Can you talk a little bit about that decision and why and what you're thinking of there from a design standpoint and why you're planning on doing that?
We're kind of trying to break up the facades a bit. So it's not just monolithic, stucco. And I think it's just contemporary. It makes it a little bit more contemporary. It's kind of a contemporary idea. Use more than just stucco, single modular unit. We're trying to upgrade the house as far as energy conservation is concerned quite a bit. Well exceeded the green point requirements and insulation, thickness of the walls, it's thicker than it was before.
And there's little or no change to the front of the house, is that my understanding?
No change at all to the front of the house. We are removing a kind of dilapidated deck, a small deck and entrance to the garage that is on one of the sides, which
Right.
is actually infringes on the setback. So we're also not changing the setbacks, which is consistent.
Right.
That's there. Anybody have any questions?
Okay. Any other questions for the architect?
I have a couple.
Sure.
So I'm curious about the fireplace where it's drawn on the, on the new west elevation, there's a symbol drawn at the top, and it just might be a graphic, if that's a design element that we should be, in the know.
Well, no, we didn't add that. That's there. It's kind of a funky looking, I don't know, we could remove it. I don't think the client cares much about.
Keep it there.
Keep it there, yeah. It's interesting. It's sheet metal. You can paint it. I thought it was curious myself.
Is it a spark arrestor? Is it doing work?
I assume that's what the intent was, but I kind of like it. It's kind of curious.
And then I was also curious, looking at the floor plan, one child has access to a deck, and the decision to hold the deck back on the other side, was that for cost-saving measures or to give a asymmetrical?
Oh, I'm not sure.
I'm looking at the lower deck.
Well, it just so happened that it worked out that the the first run of the lower deck ended up, just about at the level of the floor level of the lower floor. So really, I mean, it could be just a landing, but it was kind of, we wanted a door which also acts as a fire, it's the egress door. Instead of having egress windows, we have a door there. So it worked out so that the door could be opened right onto the lower deck, and then that could be used as a fire egress, basically. Does that explain it, or I don't know exactly what your question was, but.
Any other questions? I guess I'll ask a question. In our design review guidelines, we talk about buildings that have an FAR over 0.45 that's getting to be pretty big for Albany, pretty large structure on the lot. And we asked for some additional amenities, high-quality design features, little special things that make the home distinctive or kind of add value to the street or whatever. And I looked at this, and that came to my mind that this is a very straightforward design without that, and certainly with no changes whatsoever in the front. I'm worried. My thinking is that the project isn't going to fulfill that sort of goal in our design review guidelines, and I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about what you might do or what additional amenities might be added to the design to sort of make it stand out a little bit more.
Well, there's one reason why we didn't address that is because if you look at the street view, I think there's some colored pictures. There's a lot of pretty developed vegetation. I think there's bougainvillea, some trees. Really didn't want to destroy that kind of nice, almost cottage look. There's a fence and an arbor over the gate, and trying to keep that actual sort of low-key cottage concept rather than make a grandiose statement, which I think on that block isn't really necessary or.
Do you know if the owners have you talked to the owners, or are you thinking about like painting the front of the house?
Oh yeah, they're painting the entire house. In fact,
fixing the garage door up.
Oh yeah, they're going to do all of that. My client is a contractor, and he tends to upgrade everything in the house completely, including the facade. But we really didn't want to change the architectural aspects of this because it has a cottage feel, and we wanted to maintain that. Yeah.
Okay.
I had a similar reaction, but I think in this case, you had mentioned something about potentially replacing the front porch. Is that correct? Or the decking on the front porch?
A little appendage off on the north side.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't really see it because there's you can see it in plan, but you can't really. The photographs don't allow you to see that because there's quite a bit of vegetation, and there's an arbor over the entrance. And is that a bougainvillea? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, here's the. The owner might upgrade the railing. That's that point. Yeah, they have 4 kids, and they're pretty anxious to get them settled in. They've been paying 2 mortgages, and it's gonna.
Okay.
We are changing all the windows. So.
You are changing all
Yeah,
the windows.
all the windows are being upgraded.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
What window company are you?
Milgard, I think the specs are on there. Are the dual glazed, client likes the vinyl, but they will have casing, so
Okay.
I think it'll look good. It's part and parcel of the upgrade, the energy conservation component.
All right.
I have a question for you. Where are you going to put the 2 street trees you're proposing?
That's a good question. I noticed that on the, I just read that today, and there's a lot of vegetation on that. There might be room for it, but I don't know if it's a,
It doesn't appear to be a partnership.
I don't know if it's a necessity.
In his energy form, he put down 2 new trees, 2 new street trees.
Sure, but I'm saying, yeah, I
Yeah.
agree, where would they go?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I you know,
And
then we have to look at that more closely, because there are a lot of developed vegetation. Some of it could be removed. It's not, as you can see.
I'm being
Yeah, I don't
facetious
know.
a little bit here because I think somebody took the points. And my point being, I think when you fill out the form, you should be conscious of what you're filling out, because your points are way over. But then when you start really looking at it, you know, you're using certified wood floorings, forestry, some advanced framing techniques, things like that, that can be quite expensive for an addition like this.
I might be mistaken, but I work with some Greenpoint people, and they told me that really you can have more than you are required when you fill out the form, and then when you come to assess it closely, as long as you're over the allowable or the required points, you'd be okay. So, you know, certain elements seem to cost too much or not be as practical or viable, then you can remove them as long as you're still over the point system.
Yeah, we don't go out and certify the building, so, yeah, it's an informational item, but I think realistically, people have to look at it.
Oh, you don't certify these? And I know in Oakland you do, so.
Right. Well, we're moving that way, but we have.
Okay. So it's a trust issue.
It's an
but-
informational issue.
Yeah, informational, yeah. Well, we'll be well over the minimum anyway. I think the minimum's 50.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right. Any other comments? No? Okay.
No other questions of the applicant?
I have no other questions. Anyone else? Okay. All right. Thank you. If we have other questions, we'll call you back up. That's good. All right. Now I'd like to open it up to the public. If anyone has any comments to make on this application, this project, please come forward. So, yeah.
Yep.
And I presume you got the architect's name. You're all set there? Okay, great. Could you, I'll give your name and everything for the
I'm
record.
Christine Seeley. I'm part owner of 710 Gateview, which is right next door. So
Next
I
door
have
on
several,
the
yeah, right
south
next door.
side then, on the north side, you know?
I don't know my north south,
Okay.
I'm sorry. So the main issues I'm really concerned about is parking. We have terrible parking problems up there. We have people that rent out rooms to people, and there's lots of cars. We always have trouble with parking. The other issue is I do have a view up there, and that's the main reason I moved up there, and I'm going to lose part of my view of San Francisco to this construction. I know they're keeping the facade in the front the same, but it's a big house behind it, and I'm going to be living right next to it. It's a really big house behind it, and I am losing part of my view. I lost part of my view to Pierce Street additions, and, you know, pretty soon I'm going to have to stand in my bathroom to see. So, you know, I am very concerned about that, and the parking. I know it's difficult to make another parking place, but parking's really critical up there. And then, you know, it's a big building right next to me. I'm concerned about its ultimate size. That's all I have to say.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Good, thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to address the commission on 714 Gateway? Gateview, come in, come up, please.
Hello, good evening. My name is Chad Shepard. I work for the owners of 716 Gateview, David Chi and Carmen Ng.
Okay,
They can't be here this evening, so they asked me to proxy for them.
okay.
They do have some concerns about how this construction is going to affect their house. One of which is a major concern is the water runoff and the drainage, because it's on a very steep hill and the houses are very close together. So they just want to know more about the drainage plan and where the water's going to go, especially like the roof and the downspouts and everything. Another concern is the views. This house going back 18 feet beyond what it is now, plus the decks. They have, from their kitchen window, there's 2 windows in the corner. One goes back and one goes sideways, so that's gonna wipe out that view. Another concern is the overall height. Once again, further blocking their view. And the water and the drainage. And then also being a 5-bedroom home and no extra parking, and the streets are very narrow and everyone already parks on the sidewalk to let the cars get through. So it's just gonna create more traffic on that little street. And I think that's it. So mainly they wanna know more about the drainage and erosion control, and how their views are going to be protected.
Okay.
Let me maybe go ahead and, in the staff report and the findings and conditions, they have to do a drainage plan, and the city reviews that drainage plan.
Okay.
So that's one issue. The height, it's below the height limit. As far as views, the unfortunate thing is Albany does not have a view preservation ordinance. So views are privilege and not a right in Albany.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
that's the only way I can address their concerns.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay. Is there anyone else who'd like to address the commission on this item? Okay, hearing no one, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for comments. And, okay. Anyone want to start on this?
I can take a shot at it.
Sure.
It would be good to know whether or not the applicants have spoken with the adjacent neighbors to try to address their concerns. That would be helpful to the commission. In quite a number of applications, a lot of issues with the neighbors can be negotiated. So I'd be interested to know if that has happened. It would appear that perhaps not. But besides that, Albany does not have a view ordinance, so we cannot disallow an application because it will be blocking a view. However, we do take into consideration the applicants working with the neighbors to try to mitigate that. Other than that, I think you mentioned the FAR. I'm not as concerned with the there being a significant extra amenities to this project, since it's very modest in its scope. It's just in a way, in terms of altering the existing structure, it's simply extending the existing structure out to the back and not making any changes to the front facade at all, and simply extending the roof line back farther. So in that way, I think the design is fine. I don't, and it does. I'm not sure, and perhaps my other commissioners might know. Might be more clever than I, or might have more knowledge about how they might get another parking place in here. But it does seem that the site constrains that parking, the off-street parking quite a bit, and the existing structure does. So I'm not sure how they could manage that and still build their project. So I'm tentatively inclined to be in favor of this project at this point.
Okay. All right. Bill, go ahead.
You know, in general, I would agree that it's true we don't have an ordinance, but I think it would be in your best interest to talk with your neighbors and address their concerns so that as the construction goes forward, that everyone feels more comfortable with it. And I think that you'll be happier moving in, having had those conversations beforehand. It's true that design is not overwhelming for a project that's typically of the size, but in this case, I feel like it's appropriate because it's all being added at the back of the house. They're not going to be details that are really going to affect the facade or the street or the relationship with the sidewalk. You know, if they wanted to come back and change the railing so that it had a relationship with the language of the railing on the back decks, I could see starting to tie in some of the details, but as that's not proposed at this time, we're not voting on that. I do have a concern with the vinyl windows. I know that Albany allows them, but as an architect, I have a feeling that long-term, it might benefit you to look into more of an aluminum clad or even fiberglass. I worked on a project with a historian, and they were recommending fiberglass clad at this point because they're paintable down the road if you change your mind on the color, and they will last a very long time. And so, and they have a look that's a little bit more crisp than the vinyl, and there are some good companies out there that are producing that. So maybe take a look at that. I also agree that this is one of those tough lots that it really would be difficult to put a second parking space unless we were to require a tandem spot in the garage, and it seems like you know, they're just going to park in front of their own driveway. They're just going to block their own driveway with a second spot anyway. So like it's doing right there, and while we can't count that as a second parking spot, no one else is going to be parking there. You probably pull up and block the driveway and unload the kids. So I am willing to approve this with the parking exception, and I think that's all I have to say at this time.
Bill, comments?
You know, I don't have any more than what was just Commissioner Eisman just said.
Okay.
Nothing to add to it.
Okay.
So I'll be brief.
So Stacy's covered it. All right. I also looked at the parking situation when I was there. I agree with the neighbor that it is a very parked up street. There were spaces available when I was up there, and I've been up there other times, and I can usually find a space to walk within 100 yards of this property, I guess. The other side of it is, I don't know how you would get another parking space on this building. We certainly have required them before, and I think that we issue parking exceptions reluctantly. But I don't think that this project, I don't know how you would put another parking space on this project, and certainly don't have the front yard available for it. As in my earlier comments, I think that the home ends up being a very large home, and it's a very straightforward kind of pedestrian way of expanding the home. It isn't particularly decorated or elegant. It's just a very straightforward, run-of-the-mill kind of project. And with an FAR ending up at .52, that bothered me. I'm somewhat, I'm glad to hear that there's going to be work done on the front of the building, that the building will be painted, that there'll be new windows, and I really think that the street presence should be improved. I think that the grapevines there could stay, but that they ought to be pruned and trained in a better way. I think you can do a lot with that front porch to make it look new and spiffier, and I would really like to see you do those things. Similarly, I agree with Stacy about the comments on view blockage and concerns about that. I think that it does behoove you to talk to the neighbors and find out. I mean, this is the kind of thing where you can go into their homes, you can say, look out their windows, and you can sometimes modify your building with a change here, a foot there, a little bit of change in the design, a change in the design of your deck railing. There may be things that you can do that will somewhat ameliorate the effects on views that you're having on your neighbors. And I would really like you to like you to do that. So if I vote for the project, it'll be somewhat reluctant because I don't think you have met our standard for exceptional design on large projects. Okay, with that, is there any other further comments?
Well, yeah, Joe, I want to address your comments and suggest that perhaps we could approve it with, either we could ask for them to come back with more information about the treatment or better treatment for the front facade and the landscaping, and address that, because actually I do agree with that we I'd like to see a more formal plan for how the street street view is going to be cleaned up, or we could approve it with the provision that they come back to staff with those plans, and it's up in staff's discretion to approve those, to approve that. Some suggestions for how we could move forward.
Thank you, Nick. I would support either of those or one of them, yeah. Okay.
I think that's a great idea in the sense that, this isn't a craftsman house. It wasn't built in the 1920s. It doesn't have wood details on the exterior. It's not a Tudor where, it just doesn't have those, it doesn't lend itself to having those details. And I think applying them in the front just to apply them doesn't make sense. But I could see that this, having more of a garden in the front, a design garden, would really set it off to the street. And maybe that's their intention anyway, to come in and so if we could ask them if they want to, if that was part of the plan, is ultimately to have a garden, if they contribute that as part of the design when they come back.
All right. So I will ask the owners that. Go ahead. Yeah, we're at the applicant could come forward. So yeah, we're at a decision point here. We'd like to know if you would be willing to sort of provide either us or staff with a landscape plan and then implement it for the front, and also describe what improvements or upgrades, replacements, painting, and sort of activities you might want to take for the front of the building.
Yes, that was our intention to upkeep the front yard of the homes. At this time, the fence of the house existing is rotted out, and it is our intention to rebuild it to the same consistent of the domestic existing, but to have a new fence, and at the same time prune down the trees and to have it regrown to domestic existing.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Staff, would you be willing to, if we had a condition and had it come back to you, would that be acceptable, or do you think it should come back to the commission? Or something like that? Okay.
I'd be opposed to a landscape plan being required because we've never done that on any residential property before. And I think that we're treading on dangerous territory here.
Okay.
If the applicant was willing to put an arbor or trellis or something, that's fine. But to require a landscape plan, I think it's really something we've never done before.
We see them. Many applicants provide landscape plans for their projects.
If they so desire.
They so desire.
But that's a difference than requiring it than it is to.
Yeah.
Well,
And landscape plans change.
The intent is to change the fence and the fence is part of the yard architecture, and it can add detail, and so I would be okay moving this forward, knowing that the intent, if they wanted to make that part of the applicant package, that the fence is updated at the same time. Is that something that you would be interested in approving?
No, that's a different thing. The fence is very important here,
Yeah.
and is a permanent structure. So I would think that we'd want to see the detail, or staff would want to review the detail of the fence, because it is right on the property line.
Right.
And we have problems with height allowable on fences in the front property line, front setbacks.
I think staff is going to provide some input.
Yeah, actually, this is more a suggestion. The applicant expressed interest in keeping the bougainvillea, and in looking at this street view, it seems appropriate that a new fence and some sort of arbor treatment would improve the appearance. That being said, the trellis arbor details do require administrative design review, so I think whatever additional changes they make to the front facade, I think it would be appropriate to bring it back to the commission as a consent calendar item. There's still a public hearing, and it meets the protocol for an arbor detail.
All right,
I can support that.
okay. Okay, then, is a motion appropriate, or Nick, do you have a comment?
Oh, I was just going to say, so that means that we move this, so what are you suggesting for an action?
I would suggest that you move approval, but with the condition that front facade changes, including but not limited to the fence and potential arbor details, if the applicant so chooses to install an arbor, come back to the commission as a consent calendar item.
All right.
I'm going to add something to that, just because I'm feeling generous tonight. That take place prior to certificate of occupancy, so we don't have to hold up their building permit for something like that? Because I understand that.
That's a good suggestion. I think that's.
Because I think the applicants are stressed a little about carrying two mortgages, and I don't want to hold it up.
Okay.
So final details will be approved prior to certificate of occupancy by, I forgot your official title.
Oh,
Zoning administrator.
a city planner, yeah.
City planner, okay.
So I'll go
All right.
ahead and move,
That's good.
make a motion, if that's all right, to approve application, do I have the number right, PA 13-076, with the amendments suggested by staff, with amendments suggested by staff, because I'm not going to be able to repeat them.
And I'll second it.
You mean by the commission, the
Right.
recommendations by the commission?
Well, the staff's recommendation for how to proceed, and then was there an additional?
The fence and front arbor will be brought back to the planning director or community development director for final approval prior to certificate of occupancy.
Right, that's on.
Okay. All right, it's been moved and seconded.
I second. Oh, was it already second?
Oh.
I apologize.
Okay.
You
I think-
seconded, right?
Has it?
I moved. Did you second?
I'm not sure.
What's that?
I heard a second over here.
Okay, and Stacy seconded. So,
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Okay, let's vote. All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
All right. I don't know how I'm going to, I think I'll vote yes, with a little bit of reluctance on this one. So I don't think it meets the standards of exceptional design for large homes, but I'll go ahead and vote yes on it. And I would urge you to work with neighbors, and if there are some design changes you can make to mitigate your view impacts, especially on that back deck or in those back rooms, I urge you to do that. And that would be in line with our thinking, and I think that staff would go ahead with those and encourage that as well.
And what I'm hearing is that it's the commission's perhaps feeling, at least the majority of the commission's feeling, that a landscape plan would be great, but it's not being required at this time.
I second that. I second that, yeah. When you're doing the landscape plan, you can figure out how you're going to meet with street tree requirements too.
Well, it's not a requirement.
It's not a requirement.
They took it on under their energy form as a credit.
It's not in the conditions of approval? I think it might be. Yeah.
Well, not for a lot like this would only be one tree.
Ah,
I don't believe it's two trees. Yeah.
all right, okay. Okay. All right, I think that concludes that item. So you have approval, and there's a 14-day appeal period, but after that, if no one appeals, our decision is final. So, okay? Good luck with the project. Great.
Does Albany take permits under risk so that they can apply for the building permit while the 14-day runs out? Yeah, okay. So you understand that? You understand? You can apply for your building permit. It's called building permit at risk. They won't issue it till the 14 days are up, in case you're trying to get this thing in this year. So,
Yeah, so you can move forward with your work if you want to. Okay. All right. The next item on our agenda then is number C here. Am I right? No, I'm wrong. It is Posen, 1502 Posen. And let's see, this is for design review of an addition and for a roof deck. And is there a staff report? And there's okay, there's the applicant.
Before you is a design review request for a modest addition and a proposed roof deck for the home at 1502 Posen. There is an addition, a new master bedroom with closet, which is proposed to be located at the rear of the home. The existing home contains 3 bedrooms and 1 bathroom and is just under 1,400 square feet in area. The addition is proposed to be 190 square feet and will be approximately 12 and a half feet in height. As I mentioned, it's located at the rear of the home, and if you look at the floor plan, it's proposed to be accessed through an existing bedroom in the house. The roof deck is proposed to be located at the rear of the home. At that elevation, it's single story. So the overall height from the grade to the top of the handrail is 16 feet, 2.5 inches. Before you on the screen is the proposed rear elevation. So the roof deck would be accessed through an exterior spiral staircase. And you can see that there are wooden cable handrails that are proposed for the roof deck area. There's also a pretty extensive window scheme that's proposed. And in addition to this rear elevation, there are also block glass windows which are proposed for the bedroom addition. Given the issues that we've had recently with roof decks, as well as the extensive window scheme, we thought it best to take it to the commission for further discussion and feedback to the applicant. There are draft conditions and findings in your staff report if you feel you can come to a decision this evening. Certainly, I'm happy to answer any questions you have, and the applicant is here this evening.
All right, thank you. Any questions for staff? I have one little comment anyway. In the staff report, your arrow pointing to the subject home is a little confusing. I think
It's the house next
it's actually
door.
the house.
Yeah, Google put me at the
arrow
wrong
sort of
house.
refers to 1604, and
Right.
then when I went out in the field, that I realized that I had looked at the wrong house. So, okay. Anything else of staff? All right. Let's call on the applicant here and introduce yourself and go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Carl Kelly. I own 1502 Posen.
Great.
Bought the house in 1978. It's a Craftsman. It was built in 1920s, somewhere around 26, I think. And I like to think it's one of the greenest, if not the greenest, house in Albany. About 3 years, we put in a extensive solar system on the roof, got it re-roofed, put a fireplace insert in there so it's no longer burning wood. We've got planters in the back, compost tumblers, just put in a 98.5% efficient furnace in the basement. So we've done all kinds of things to make the house green, and now we'd just like to make it a little more exciting. The literature you've seen says that it's a 3-bedroom. It's really actually a 2-bedroom, and we split one of the bedrooms in half. You know, we built a wall to make 2 very small bedrooms. And so we're looking to get a large bedroom in the back with a view of our garden and open up the kitchen, as you see right here. Previous. So that it has a better view of all the trees that we have planted on the property. I've run this project by our neighbors, and we only have 2 neighbors that are concerned. Right behind us is St. Mary's High School. So, you know, with their 3-story building at the back of our property, they just have no reason to object to this project.
Plus, they're about a half mile away.
Yeah, it's a very deep lot. Thank God. That's really what got me to pay more than I could afford in 1978 to have this thing, is that lot, because the house was dilapidated and we've been fixing it up ever since. Yeah, we've talked to Jeffrey and Karen Tuffin on Posen and Jim Karen on Ordway, our 2 neighbors, and neither of them have a problem with it. We've shown them the plans, we've shown them of course, the story poles, and our neighbors across the street are very, very distant. This intersection of Posen and Ordway is immense. It's got a crop circle in the middle of it, right. And so I can understand a lot of objections to roof decks, but if you're going to approve a roof deck, this is your chance, because it's just the least offensive roof deck you're going to find. The post and cable fence or barriers around it are designed to let all the sunlight possible through to our neighbors. When we looked at this thing, we were thinking, yeah, we need more square feet, and we've got this large lot, but, you know, I've seen houses add a 2nd story throughout the city and just obliterate the sunshine for their neighbors. That's just not a neighborly thing to do. So we you know, after spending a lot of time on the roof with the solar system and the chimney replacement and that, I got to really like the view up there, and I wanted a way of getting it without destroying the sunlight for my neighbors, and so this was our attempt. I have pictures of what the view of our neighbors' yards look like, the view from the roof deck elevation are on this thumb drive if you'd like to see them.
One other, can you plug that in easily and we can see them? Okay.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about it when you have a chance as well. I'll wait till you're ready there. Yep, no, it's not. Signal.
I just pushed the on button. It wasn't.
Probably went to bed.
Yep.
Oh, no, he just lost initials.
Jeff will take care of that. I have a question for you while you're
Yeah,
comment.
sure, Doug.
When I was over there the other day, you told me that the story poles were inaccurate in one spot, and other commissioners
Yeah,
probably
they were put up in haste
not
in the
have known
rain
that.
just before the Super Bowl, and wasn't thinking too clearly about that. But they are actually, yeah, I've got a drawing in here that shows you where they are. I've got a picture of where they are from the rear of the house and where they should be.
Okay, great.
You can, yeah, we can load them up through here.
Okay.
He's still around. There are your pictures, so it'd be good if you spoke at the microphone so we can get this recorded, okay?
Okay, this is the view of our neighbor on Posen from the elevation of the roof deck.
Okay.
So you can see that the view, and this is the back, so you can see there's a large tree that would block our view of their backyard from the roof deck, which is fortunate. This is the way the house looks right now. And where we intend to put the room is right here.
Right.
It'll have its own peak. Okay, if you just skip to the next view. All right, there's a view of the side of their house. Okay, let's see. Yeah, and that right there is a fence that has been there for the last, since about 1982. And that's what they currently look at when they look out their window at our house. So what they'll see instead will be a finished wall with those 3 glass block windows. There's a gate that we added to the approach, just a picture of the furnace. This is what the side of our house looks like from the street in front of our neighbor's house. And this is the walkway that leads to the back. You can see there's very little space between the house, and that's what motivates to get obscure glass on the windows. The octagonal window in the back of the house is inspired by some octagonal patios that we put in the backyard. So at the back of the property, we put that. Built with my own hands.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is the view of Jim Caron's yard. He also has a stand of trees that would block our view of his backyard, so we wouldn't be staring down at him. So the trees are just ideally positioned to protect the privacy of our neighbors. Now this is the solar panels. And now here, right here shows the story poles, if you just stay at this for a little while. And the red lines indicate where the story poles actually should be.
Yeah.
Because the deck is it's under 12 feet long from this edge where it's going to end. Actually coming this way, about 2.5 feet. And this is the view that we're trying to get. Standing at the elevation of the roof deck, you can't see it, but today in this picture because of the haze, but you can see the Golden Gate Bridge very clearly and the tail end of the San Francisco over here. But it's really a great feeling up there. It's exciting. And the other thing it gives us is another place to grow vegetables. You could see from the trees on my neighbor's property on the southern edge that there's just a tremendous amount of shade coming from his area. There's only this one little patch we have for vegetable planters, and we're using it. But the roof deck would give us an opportunity to grow some more veggies.
Okay.
Any
other questions for the applicant here? Okay. If we have more, we'll call you back up.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to address this item? Okay. Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. Who would like to start here with discussion on this project?
I can start because I don't really have much to say. I like the project. It seems rather modest, and in terms of roof decks, it seems also pretty uncontroversial. And no neighbors here speaking up with issues, so I'm fine to approve this project at this point.
Okay.
I'll just say, I have no comments about the project.
Sure. Go ahead.
No, I have no comments.
You have no comments?
No
You have
comments.
no comments, okay.
Comments. Oh, my goodness.
Stacy, do you have some comments?
I do.
Me too.
Mostly good. So it is a modest addition, and on those longer lots on Posen, it's reasonable to go back, and I'm glad that you had the chance to communicate with your neighbors and that, you know, you'll want to do this feeling good about that, and that's exactly what you've done, and yeah, that's great. I have to laugh a little bit because I grew up on the East Coast where we would eat dinner outside every night, and I moved to Albany and I built this big deck off my yard, and it's too cold to actually eat out there at night. So build your deck. I would question how much it's going to ultimately get used, and so I hope that you use it to grow veggies. I think that's an excellent idea. Put a dining table up there and you know, enjoy your view. I do have some concerns about the window arrangement on the outside of the house, on the back, and it's more of a kind of consistency with the rest of the house and all the variety of shapes and the casement versus, or the casement windows and the double hung windows, and the relationships it can be refined a little bit. I'm not gonna slow up the process here, but I would just ask that as you continue to refine and you get to construction details, maybe you think a little bit more about the windows. The other concern I have is well, I think the octagon window is kind of a bullseye a little bit. It seems out of character with the others, but also I don't know if you've had this engineered yet or if you're going to just use standard practices, but you may want to do a voluntary seismic upgrade of a couple of those walls, and I don't know if there's.
It has been engineered.
Oh, it has been engineered. Okay.
I've got the plans.
Okay.
We're going to have two or three shear walls that are going to be.
Okay, and they were able to accommodate that in what you've got drawn here.
Yeah, there'll be a shear wall here.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be
Okay, that was my next question was if there was room for that. You know, it might be if you had to shift windows over to make that work, this would be an opportunity to. I see that in the kitchen you have the two double hung windows and the door already, and you're trying to get more light, and you're probably opening your ceiling up into the roof. Is that what you're trying to do? I don't know. I'd be interested in hearing from my fellow commissioners, but for some reason I would recommend changing the octagon window into something that's more consistent with the other clerestory windows. I don't know, Commissioner Moss, what do you?
You're not going to like this.
You're not going. You like it?
Well, the problem is it goes with the deck, the patio.
Yeah,
But I think the problem is it's too large. I think the proportions in that space above, it's too tight to the door and it's too tight to the roof, so I think a slightly smaller one would be fine.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, I thought maybe it was that the triangular clerestory window next to it maybe doesn't need to be there, and then the octagon could be sort of centered underneath the peak. Here it's centered above the door.
Well, we can't do anything with, we can't put
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Oh, yeah,
carries
okay,
it.
all right, I
I
understand.
mean, perspective
Then
wise-
I would kind of agree with Phil's comment that maybe it is too large, yeah. There.
But again, this is a backyard that nobody's going to see.
It's their backyard.
Let's look at
I
capturing
agree.
as much, I think the design is to just open up this whole room to the backyard and the trees and the privacy.
I know, I think you could even get more light if that was more of a triangular window that's stacked on top of the door, and it would relate better with the other windows on the top. These are just design suggestions. More like that, yeah.
Yeah, more like that.
That's an option. I can see being playful with trying to mimic the deck, but either way, I think to me, they're just grabbing as much of the light as they can and the openness that they can, and I actually think the triangular window looks out of proportion to everything, but it's a backyard. I'm never going to see it, so I think that capturing as much light as you can is a great idea, given the trees and the situation in the back facing east. And
we got a stand of native oaks back there.
yeah.
Yep, yep.
So I would just think about that moving forward. And I suspect the header for this window and the header for the triangular window, they're going to be consistent. And you could get a little bit more light if you made it a bigger window. It's just something to think about. Then the glass block on the side, there was a question of whether or not that's something that we would do here in Albany. And I'm curious, is it more of a frosted glass block or one that has a wave in it? What type of light conditions are you looking for on the inside?
I was hoping for a wave.
Mm-hmm.
Pardon?
Is that an 8x8 that you're showing, glass block? Is that an 8x8? You can go to 12x12 glass block, and they do come with a kind of
I was thinking 6.
8
Wait
by.
a minute, this is about 32. These are 6x6.
Yeah, good luck. You're going to go 8x8.
8x8's better?
Can't think if you can get 6x6. It's either 8x8 or 12x12. Yeah. 7/8 or 7 and yeah. But
Because I was looking at these standard.
You know what, I realize
block in frame sections.
would
right.
you come up to the podium? I realize that we've gotten into a dialogue and
Right, there's they sell these glass blocks in frame sections at places like Home Depot, and the dimensions of these windows was to put 2 of those sections together. I'm not sure if the architect depicted the boundaries between the glass block correctly.
Just quickly, I found 6x6 on the web. I have no idea where it's from, but it seems to be available.
They are. I guess they're available now. I've never used something
You
that
did some
small
research.
because by the time
No. Those can't be 6x6. Those have got to be 8x8s.
yeah, once you get
Yeah.
6x6, you've got so many
Because-
score joints, and it just defeats the
Right,
purpose. of
because
glass
I
block.
remember the conversations about the width of these windows, and that, I knew that the studs would be 16 inches on center, and that the windows are 32 inches wide, which would require 3 studs to be passed. And I just didn't, I thought, well, why couldn't you get something that fit between the 16, anyway.
Aside from the details of the size of the glass blocks, what are your thoughts conceptually about having these side windows made of glass blocks? It's unusual. We don't have that happen very often in Albany. Any design review comments on that from the commission?
There's a house. Okay, I know who the architect
we're
was.
going to say the same thing.
Actually, I was on the commission when we approved that, and that was quite a heated discussion about the glass blocks on Marin.
Or the one on Marin, yeah.
And I don't think it was unanimous on the approval of that, but because it was on Marin,
Yeah.
there was some leeway.
Well, that's the front. I mean, that's right on the front. That's just very different.
This is only visible from the neighbors, right?
Right, it's only
Yeah.
visible to the neighbor. You can't even see it from the street.
I was going to say that I think that that's a less successful installation of it on Marin, but in this case, it feels appropriate. What I would caution is that you actually see if you can find or go test the light, because it is your bedroom, and it may be that it doesn't give you enough privacy and you still end up putting hurt in there, and I think that would be sad if you could just go to
That would be really sad,
a
because
thicker glass block or more obscure. So I would definitely see if there's a place that has it mocked up that you could
Okay.
have a real, a real, sorry, I'm not saying this well.
Yeah, privacy.
I think you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do.
I think that's a very good
But-
point. Very good point.
But I agree that because this is at the back of the house, and if the neighbor doesn't have an objection looking out onto it, as a matter of fact, I have less objection to the glass block than I do to the octagon window. So,
You know what's beautiful about this world is we don't all have to agree.
Yeah, there's something else going on. I was a math major, so I just, I have this feeling for the octagon. I mean,
I'm going to make a motion if there's no other comments.
Any other comments? So, anything further?
I'm going to move approval.
Oh, wait, I haven't,
Sorry.
I haven't quite finished yet.
Okay.
Okay, my comments, I don't have a problem with the glass blocks. I think in this instance, it works as fine, and there are windows from neighboring homes very close by, and I think if this is done right, it'll work just fine. This is the second rooftop deck we've had in a month or two. And I'm still concerned about the concept of roof decks. They're just not addressed in our design review guidelines. It's sort of a new territory for us. We approved one on Ordway a couple of weeks ago. And in Albany, in that part of Albany where people can have a view, I think going up a couple of feet, as I said before, going sideways a couple of feet, suddenly, boom, you have a little view of the Golden Gate or of Mount Tam opening up, and that this could become a real trend, we could see roof deck after roof deck after roof deck, 3, 4, 5 of them a year, something like that. I think it's very possible. And at some point, we're going to find one that is going to be problematic. And I think that I think we should have some advanced thoughts about how they can be integrated into the house. I think in every case they're kind of a luxury. It's not like living space, like another bedroom on the second floor, that sort of thing. So I remain nervous and uncertain about approving roof decks. This one, I looked at it closely. It is set way back on the house. It is relatively modest. I think it is, from a design standpoint, I think having it up there like that, it's quite a jarring effect in the roof line of the overall house, have that back there. I think with the cables, the cable railings and everything like that, it won't be quite as visible as it looks like on the drawings, actually. And so I'm a little less concerned about it in that respect. But in any event, those are my concerns about it. And go ahead.
If I may say something, the structural engineer was really had to work hard to figure out how he was going to transfer the load of that deck to our foundation.
Right.
So I don't know.
So
I think it's a little. I don't think it's going to be a fad. There's too much in the way. It really was a challenge to figure that out.
Okay.
The other thing we'd like to do is see if we can get some sort of the handrails on top of those posts. I think we're going to try to find aluminum for those, so they're really thin.
Yep. I think that I would urge you to do that. And I have seen some places where there's visual problems, visual concerns. People even use glass for the railings around them to sort of make them transparent.
I've seen those
I'm not suggesting that here at all, but
and when we put the veggie planters up there, we'll put them on the south side so that they don't shade our northern neighbors.
All right. So anyway, those are my comments. And I also want to echo the other commissioners' comments about concerns with the window configuration on the rear. I didn't look at it very closely because I like Phil. I said, well, this is their project, their backyard. No one else is going to see this ever. And if that's the design that they want, they can live with it. I personally like the idea of the octagon, but I don't think it quite works. And I would probably make the hard decision, if I were you, to cut it out and do something like that. But do something like that. But again, maybe you can get a door with an octagon cut in. I don't know. Okay, those are my comments, and I think I'm ready to entertain a motion if we...
move to approve application PA 13086, 1502 Posen, design review with the findings and conditions of approval as presented by staff.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Okay, it's been approved unanimously, and there's a 14-day appeal period, but if no one appeals, then our decision is final. And you can be in touch with staff for your next steps. Okay, congratulations and good luck with your project. Great.
It's interesting that the other roof deck was only a block or 2 blocks from here. It must be this side has the good views.
That's the area, that's where they
Well, I
are.
think it's a little discussion while we wait. I think it's interesting that people are going up for the sun rather than in their backyards.
Yeah.
So I think it's more of a natural progression of trying to find the sun
Yeah.
that we're going to see. We are going to see
I
more and
think
more,
Yeah, I hear you, I understand that.
especially if we're going to convert our backyards into vegetable gardens.
All right, where are we here? 1502 Posen. The next one is 638 Evelyn. This is item C on new business. Let's see, is there a staff report?
Yes. The applicant is seeking 3 entitlements associated with the project request. The first is design review. The second is a conditional use permit to extend an existing non-conforming wall. And the third is a parking exception associated with the project. The subject home was built in 1927 and is 851 square feet in area. It's located on a 2,500 square foot lot, but it's actually a 50 by 50 lot, which is what creates difficulty with setback compliance as opposed to a 25 by 100 foot lot. There was an illegal addition that was constructed at the southwest corner of the home. As part of this project, the applicant is proposing to eliminate the illegal addition and reduce the first floor area to 747 square feet. And then within the building, the floor plan would be reconfigured to include 1 bedroom and 1 bathroom. And a new set of stairs would be added to access the second story, which is proposed. The addition is proposed to be 705 square feet. With this application, they would do all of the construction and finish out the exterior. However, the interior finishing would have to occur at a later date due to budget constraints. The project would result in a 1-bedroom, 1-bath home, 1,467 square feet in area with a maximum height of 26 feet. As I mentioned before, use permit is necessary to extend. It's the non-conforming wall on the west side of the property. It's 2 feet 10 inches off of the property line. Currently, there is parking within the single-car garage. There is a driveway in front of that that measures 15 feet, so it is directly in the front yard setback. The commission, through their review, may approve up to a 0.6 FAR on a 2,500 square foot lot. This falls just under that. It's 0.58 FAR. The existing home is a Spanish eclectic style, and it's proposed to remain the same. And this is the proposed elevation. I thought I had a photo here. This is the proposed elevation. So you can see that they're proposing the clay tile shingles over the addition area, this pop-out bay detail, the new trellis on the front elevation, as well as a new 3-foot tall wall with the clay tile details. For your purposes this evening, we are asking that you provide feedback to the applicant and staff. There are findings and conditions which are included in your packet should you choose to take formal action this evening. And the applicant is here, can answer specific questions, and certainly I can
Any
assist.
questions from staff? Okay, none right now. All right, would the applicant like to come forward and talk a little bit about your project then?
Hello, Commissioners. Hi, it's our first time here. This is Lorick Design.
Okay.
We primarily work over in Oakland.
Okay.
So this is a new process for us, so hello, everybody. Okay. This house is a kind of a dilapidated, small little house that our client has picked up, and she is disabled. And so the idea is to make it level in and to have her be able to pull into the driveway and get out of her vehicle and go around to the side of the house where she has more time to access it, instead of being exposed in the front of the house where she feels vulnerable. So the 3-foot wall gives her some protection, some separation from the street, so to speak, as she is either her wheelchair or her canes or her crutches or whatever she may be in that moment. So the idea was to move the door around the side and then create this visual as if you still had a front of a house with a front door when you first looked at it. So you had with the gate, it gave that front look, but then her access will be on the side, and it'll be level in. And then the idea is, it's all open, there'll be a lift that goes to the upstairs. She'll have 1 bedroom in the downstairs. And really, we've cut the first floor back to accommodate the requirements of this oddly constrained lot. So the 2-foot walkway in the back,
Yeah.
we just want to go up with a sheer wall. We've looked at the privacy issues, and so we've actually made reveals. So we're going to do plantons on the outside of the house so that when you're standing in the windows, you have a deeper sill. So kind of, it's not that direct view, even though there's nothing to see. You're right on top of the person's house behind you. You're looking at a roof line. And they can't see up because they're looking at a fence. So there's no privacy issues with that setback in the back. We're removing an illegal building, which is a laundry room, and opening that up so she has a full sunny side yard, which is really lovely. And then putting a roof deck on top of the garage, which gives her outdoor living space on the north side of the house. So we're trying to look at all of these different, avenues to create a feeling of yard without there really being a lot of yard on this particular house, and giving her some privacy and also giving it some sense of depth instead of it just being a box, which really, even though it has a porch now, it just feels like a box. So in our design attempt, we try to give it details that broke it up in different ways and also fit within the client's budget.
And the idea is, I think, you're going to take a lot of the existing, you're going to basically lift the house?
Correct.
Do I understand that
Yes,
correctly from reading the plans?
10 feet 4 inches.
10 feet 4 inches.
Yes,
so
I believe that's what it is.
Move it up,
Yeah.
build a new foundation, and then put the
Correct.
new
It'll be
first level. Okay.
Right, slab on grade. The lower level will be 8 feet. It'll be a great room with a stair and her lift, a bathroom that's ADA accessible, and then a back bedroom. So that's all on the ground level. Then upstairs is unconditioned right now, but eventually she would like to put a bathroom and have that be an artist loft because she's an artist. So she'd like to use it, but because of the way we're building it, you could come in very easily and put up partition walls, because we're going to do trusses, and create 2 bedrooms and a bath, or 3 bedrooms, or a family room. It's very convertible. So.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments of the applicant?
I'm curious about the phase 2, the new drawings that came in. It's proposed to put a sloped roof in and then come back and add the false front?
No, we can go, and can you show do we have a picture of what it looks like now? Perfect. That's exactly the facade. So we're just raising it up And the slope, which you're seeing that dotted line on the back, is because we're going to do photovoltaic cells. We're putting solar in. So we have this raked roof, which is a 2-in-1. So we have to do a bitumen thing, built up on top of those trusses. And we could put a parapet around it, so if we didn't want to see the angle, it's very minor. We're going up 2 feet in our slope.
Yeah.
So it's really, if it became irksome and you guys didn't like it, we could probably just put a parapet around it and make it look like a square roof like everything else.
Yeah.
But the idea is to get that slope so we can pick up all the sun. So we're doing a point of use water heater. She's doing radiant heat. She's doing solar. She's doing insulation. She's doing rigid insulation. Part of the roof I want to do with the SIP panel insulation, so it gives you 40% more value to it than a regular R30. So we're trying to do all of these things for her that works off of this solar array eventually to get put on the roof. So that's the reasoning.
So I guess I want to make sure I understand. You're taking the existing floor plan and you're leaving that and you're modifying it, but you're taking the facade and lifting it up?
No, we're taking the entire house.
The entire house.
Going up 10 feet. We are demolishing the interior completely. We are just raising the outside 4 walls.
So the proposed second floor is just, you're gutting the
Open
interior.
attic for now.
Okay.
Completely open. And the reason we can do it is that we're doing it with a truss system. So we're going to roll in the trusses to give us our sloop, which we can put on our solar. That's in phase 2. When we lift the house and we build the first floor, that's when we're going to design, if you can see on plan, I don't know if you guys have those. You can see the kitchen and the bathroom and that'll all be new construction.
Yeah.
So all of that'll be done, rewired, re-insulated. There's no insulation. I mean, the house is really in trouble. And then going back with that kind of eclectic Mediterranean style that's there.
Yeah.
So what are you asking for approval today, phase 1 or
We're
both phases?
asking approval to lift the house and get the project underway so that she can move in. She also is paying 2 mortgages, so she really needs to get this built. And the issue is that she doesn't have the funds to do it completely, but we have enough to get her into the first floor and do the shell. Then she can apply for refinancing and finish out her interior upstairs. So that's the process. That's why it's a two-phase motion. So we're asking for approval to lift the house, renovate the downstairs, finish the shell, and then the second phase would do the front wall, do her landscaping in the front, and do the upstairs interior and the roof line. But the facade, this section right here, exists on the ground. Did you find that photo?
Right there.
Yeah, so basically, we're just going to take this, get rid of the porch. We're just taking the whole box, detaching from the garage, and raising it.
But you're not keeping any of the interior walls, you're just doing the 4 perimeter walls?
Just the perimeter.
And you're taking the roof off? So
No,
you're
not
putting
at this, not
trusses
at this
on.
junction.
Oh, okay,
That's phase 2.
okay.
Right now, we're just lifting it and doing the downstairs. So then when she can get the funds, then we will take the plates off, the roof off, and we'll get her that pitch and do the solar and the addition upstairs.
And what is the top plate now of the?
It's 8 foot.
It's 8 foot, but you're proposing to take it to
9.6. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I don't have any other
I
questions.
have a question. The existing garage has that same scalloped kind of design as the house does and as the front porch does, right? That doesn't show on your plan, doesn't even show on your drawings, your existing drawings. So you're showing just a straight, new construction over the garage with tiles, a tile lip, and then.
Going to be a roof deck.
That'll be a roof deck.
Eventually.
So a wall around it
Yes.
then, huh?
Yeah, that's the idea of changing that shape. If Ralph missed that on the drafts, I'm sorry I didn't catch it. But yes, that would just be turned into a stucco wall with a tile cap,
Okay.
so that she had, similar to what's in the front. Up top.
Yeah, all right, okay. Yeah, all right, any other questions?
Just one for now. Actually, 2. I might as well throw it out there. Why isn't this set of windows centered on the peak?
why isn't it centered on the peak?
Right,
It probably is just a miss on my draftsperson's drawings, but they're intended to be.
okay.
Yeah,
9'6" floor to plate on the second floor?
yes.
That's a little tall.
We're at 25 feet,
Yeah.
and the maximum, I understand, is 28. So we're well below. So does it matter what's on the inside? She'd like to use that. She does big art pieces, so she'd like to have the extra space to be able to actually do her work.
Well, the issue I have, and we'll just throw it out there, is there anybody else that wants to speak on this item? Okay, so we'll just kind of play it loose here a little bit. Your proportions of that peak part are, in my mind, a little tall for the face of the building, and it's that way because of the plate height. I think that from the top of the mansard roof to the top of the peak is a little awkward. I think that either do something there
Okay?
that's more traditional with this style, and that might be as much as putting in 3 vent pipes.
Right, to
Or
break it up.
something that would break up that massing.
There actually, on the original, if there's an image, again, I didn't catch it and I apologize, there are plantons, plaster plantons, little diamonds that are on the face of this existing, because we're not changing the face of the facade at all. We're just lifting it.
Well, you're cutting everything above that porch up. And if you look at that proportion versus the proportion you're showing, it's not, your proportion's quite a bit bigger.
This is exactly what we're lifting. We're not altering that face whatsoever.
Well,
It's just the porch is removed, and when we lift it up, it looks massive on that drawing. I get
so
it.
you're telling me the top of the roof or the bottom of the mansard roof is the opening for the porch?
I'm sorry, come again?
Okay, so you see the opening for the porch, the top
Yes,
opening.
yes.
Where is that in relationship to the mansard that you're proposing to put in?
So, okay, so when we come in with the mansard, it's gonna be basically about 3.5 to 4 feet below that peak. Those are 4-foot windows.
Okay, so the windows here are going into that opening.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So that same proportion that's taken up now in the front of this facade, those are 3-foot windows. It'll be actually a 4-foot. So that whole section that's now balanced, and because of the weight of the stairs, and that's why we put in the trellis to break up that front. And there's go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was going to piggyback. Do you mind if I piggyback onto something?
No, go ahead.
Could we pull the elevation back up, the front elevation? So initially, when I saw this, I actually thought that maybe my screen was compressing the bottom, like the first floor plan looks so compressed.
I know it
compared to the
does.
second, it looks like it's being squashed. And I know, I know you see that. And so my response is we either want to like make the first floor a little bit taller so it feels more balanced with the second floor, or we want to bring the second floor down a little bit so it.
No, I think what you're missing the point. I think the point is that you don't have to have that trellis at that level. You can bring the trellis up.
You can bring the trellis
So it
up.
makes the bottom story look taller.
I think there are
Yes.
ways we can play with it, but I also think proportionally, the more horizontal windows, the way everything, like the gate, everything is so horizontal at the lower level, and then the second floor, it starts to be a little bit more vertical, and I just think that it's subtle, it's, a couple tweaks here and there, and you probably have it, but I think right now, proportionally, it feels out of balance, and so I would just recommend kind of massaging that a little bit. But the question for us and for the other commissioners would be, would we be agreeable to making the first floor a little bit higher? Or my thought was the 9/6 plate on the second floor seems really high, especially if they're trusses and you can have the cathedral ceilings, and it probably ends up being more like, 12 feet at the higher?
No, so what happens
It's a
is
flat
the trusses,
ceiling.
yeah, trusses run across, and so you only have 4 feet between each truss. So you really have a 9-foot solid height, ceiling height. Where she gets to maneuver her paintings is between these trusses, because they'll be open.
Look, sure.
Oh,
If you come up.
This is the owner.
There's, There's a lower microphone.
I think, well, just wait a minute.
You can walk.
Okay.
Yeah.
No.
He's bringing a microphone
Just wait
to
a
you.
minute. Yeah.
The thing is that it's very hard to manipulate these big canvases as it is. It's hard for me as it is. And I need height to be able to manipulate those canvases up there. And the other thing is that when you're painting and printmaking, you need enough height so that you've got a good amount of oxygen flowing around you. And when the ceiling is low, you don't have that. I'm working in a situation like that now. It's really hard.
Okay.
My point being that it's a trick that architects use where they don't have the first floor division at the floor line. They actually raise it to...
Change the mass, yeah.
Yeah, to change the mass, they'll bring it to the underside of the windows. So this puts the mass up higher visually.
I'm going to leave that to my contractor.
Yes, so basically what
Right.
you're saying is to raise this up,
Yeah.
Right.
so that this change.
So there's your change in
You're
level.
just changing the detail, you're not changing.
So the bottom feels bigger than
Yeah, I want to say something here. That I feel comfortable supporting the project in concept. There's some things that need to be worked out here. I understand your situation with the 9-foot ceilings and the large canvases and your printmaking stuff, but again, it's a residential zone, so we have to be careful about bringing in proportions for something very custom. I'm not opposed to the 9/6 ceiling. I'm just letting you know that it's hard for us to justify almost a project like this that requires volumes of spaces in a residential home. It's like trying to force something in here that's you know, if everybody did it, then that would be fine. But this is something specific that we've asked people to lower their plates many, many times because of the massing. But that's it. Like I mentioned, I'm pretty sure I can support the project. I think that the problem is that's been identified is that the massing is so tall on top and squat on the bottom. There's tricks you can use to offset that to make it look more proportional.
All right.
And I do just want to address for the client's sake is that she's gone to the trouble to redo the roof upstairs so that it is something that she could use, but then it is also viable for the neighborhood as a residential unit. So that
Right.
you could put the partition walls in.
Right.
And she is going to be installing that bathroom. So that she is trying to think of the future of Albany and the fact that it's going to be a multi-use property for her, but that it is definitely residential in its bones.
That's important.
Right. Well, I understand. My first house in Albany was 50 by 50 lot, and I understand the restrictions of this, and that's why I said I think
Yeah. I
right
just want to
now.
say she did consider it. She doesn't want to just come in and build a warehouse.
Right, well, I understand that. Again, I think that it's very close in my mind. I think there's certain tweaks that have to be done to bring the visually into proportion so that it's a more comfortable look to it. And I would encourage you to look at that line of the deck railing at 42 inches above the floor and bring that across with the windows, which look like they're about 42 inches off the second floor, and bring a band around somehow and work that in. Whether it's the trellis gets moved up, there's a secondary effect there.
Yeah, with this overhang, because the upper story does overhang the lower story, he was trying to just find this, didn't have multiple breaks with the secondary, maybe there'd be 3 steps on the one side. But I agree. And possibly what we can do, since this is truly just a facade, here is the plate line. Might be able to change that facade on the top. So I'm happy to address that.
Your upslope roof is right at that cut, is from what it shows. So I don't know how much lower you can lower that facade.
It's about 9 inches below that.
Okay, because your
Yeah.
drawings show it right at that.
Yeah,
point.
it actually drops down.
But 9 inches, you need 6 inches for a cant, so you don't really want to
Yeah.
go below the 9 inches.
No, they would be addressing your issue of dropping the 9-foot plate on the other side. to like 8.6.
But the other issue for me is that just some articulation or some type of style up above would be very helpful.
All right.
I'm sorry, I'm curious about how much of a cost savings it's going to be to pay to lift the 4 exterior walls. They're only going to 8 feet. You then have to build them to 9.6 and put a roof on it.
That would happen in the second phase.
Right, and you still have to stucco one side. I suspect in the end, you're gonna end up just building the second story. I think.
So the process is that since she only has enough to be able to lift the house and renovate the downstairs, the upstairs doesn't change at all. And the bank will come in and refinance. And at that time, we can then adjust the plate to accommodate her higher ceiling upstairs and still be underneath the, 2 or 3 feet underneath of what the 28-foot mark is. That's the reasoning. The reasoning is budgetary, is to how to phase this so that the client can actually eventually have the home that she needs. And that's entirely what's driving this, is to do it so she can get occupancy, get in, refinance it, and then refinish that upstairs.
Okay.
So would you be willing to not put the ceiling under the trusses, but have trusses that are designed that you would want to expose? Is that what my
The
understanding?
ceilings, the trusses will be exposed upstairs.
They will be exposed.
Temporarily.
So what's the height of the space at the top of the truss, at the highest point? So it's 9.6 to the bottom of the
It's
truss.
Yeah, you've got,
9.6, 2 and 12 through 20.
so the top of the trusses are 22.11. Okay, from grade. So the overall height at the very peak of that mansard is 25. 25.6.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm asking what the height of the room is upstairs? at
It's
the-
9 foot 6 inches.
To the bottom of the truss, but then
To
to
the
the top of the truss.
It's another 2 foot 4 inches.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, it's a flat ceiling, flat bottom truss with a tapered, so it's 9.6 all the way across on the bottom
On the
cord.
bottom cord.
Yeah.
But experientially, it's going to feel more like 11 feet, 10 inches is what we're saying.
Well, when it's finished, it'll have a ceiling in there,
She's saying there's not going to be a ceiling.
but,
So
but
you're going to
11 feet?
experience an 11-foot,
If
it's
you're,
going to feel much higher than 9.
if you're right in the bay, it will, but because you're at a distance and they go all the way across, you can see 2 bays. You're not going to have that loft like this room has a loft. Your vision is going to go to the bottom of that truss. I mean, if you're...
I
it's gonna-
totally disagree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we looked at a lot of images, and because they're so close, and it's a small space, you don't get the distance of being able to see that loft.
Yeah.
You're not going to experience that. You're going to experience the bottom of the truss as your ceiling.
Well, they're spaced 2 feet apart. So yes, there will be an implied ceiling at 9'6", but you will have the sense of space and the experience that the room will feel higher than 9'6", because the ceiling will really be up at almost 11 and a half feet. But I guess that's
I agree, but
just, I think that we just, in terms of proportions, if there's a way to adjust it on the facade to make it feel more balanced, I'd be in support of that. Otherwise, I think that the second floor could come down to meet the 8-foot height that you're building below it, is all I'm saying. And I think that there would be, you could easily go to 9 feet or 8'6", and you would still have the feeling that the room would be almost 10 feet tall at the highest point.
I totally appreciate what you're saying. Her struggle is if she has an 8-foot limiter, she cannot maneuver her pieces.
It's not about the experience, is what I'm hearing. It's about the physically having 9'6" to work in.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
Can you,
Well, let me.
I think what's important for me right now, I need to understand this because it's a phased project, and we've had some difficulty with a couple projects in Albany that have, so first step is to lift the house and build the downstairs walls.
Right.
And the downstairs itself.
Downstairs.
Downstairs
Yeah,
So
itself.
you've lifted
completely-
this
it's
thing.
It's as if it would be an attic upstairs.
Let me go
That's the
through my
living
train of
condition.
thought that way.
All right.
I can get this. So when you lift this, are you clearing out the first floor wall, the existing first floor walls out and just making it open space? Or are you going to leave those walls there?
No, we have to leave the center wall
Okay,
because it's picking up the ceiling.
okay.
So we're going to do the demolition that we need to do to make it an easy lift, but we're not going to be doing a lot of renovation upstairs until the second phase.
Okay, so
Okay.
so the first phase, I'm going to have a complete outside skin.
Correct. Be a complete finished project from the outside.
Trusses?
No.
Or second phase?
Correct.
So right now, what am I going to see in 6 months when you are in finished phase one? The roof is going to be what it is now. It's a flat roof. Or what
Yeah,
is
the
it?
building stays as it is.
Okay, flat roof?
Yep.
What I'm trying to do is, staff knows this, we're trying to head off possible future problems if something happens where you cannot get the loan, cannot finish it, we have a half-finished house. So that's why I want to make sure that this house is going to be finished off on the
Right.
exterior.
Right, it'll be completely done, and that's why I'm doing it this way, because she can afford to do a complete project, which is the windows downstairs, getting rid of the chimney, you know, doing everything she can as far as she can get it so that from the city standpoint, it is a complete sealed structure with finishes. And then the upstairs is basically an attic until we get to this phase two.
Yeah.
Once she can move in, and she doesn't have 2 mortgages, then she can refi, because she can't do it now, she has too much debt. You know, she has to get the occupancy and be living in the home to be able to afford a financing on it.
So the stairs are going to go in
Correct.
first phase.
Yeah. No, the lift will be second, yeah. It's the stair issues. She gets stuck inside her home, so the level in is where the anxiety is to get this level floor done.
We're trying to move it along. That's
Okay.
why I want to be very clear. I don't want you coming back here. Many times or twice. I'm trying to get this thing worked out in my head that this is what we're going to end up with, because I don't see phase drawings. I just see complete drawings. So I don't know from phase one what I'm going to see. I understand it's just that upstairs is going to be a shelf. I don't know why you're going to demo the upstairs walls when you lift it. Just leave them there until you decide to tear them down and remodel the upstairs. But that's just mine. I mean, you know, as far as I'm concerned, you could rent out the upstairs to a tenant to share the kitchen but have bedrooms upstairs until you can afford to make it an artist studio or a partial. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm trying to get at, is that where we're going to end up with and what we're going to end up with.
Bill, I appreciate where you're going, and I would like to make some comments too, if I could.
No, Doug, you can't. I won't let you. I won't give you.
Design review comments. I do have some design review concerns, and that has to do with the front, the part that fronts the street. You know, what we have now is a home that has a nice little scalloped edge that is then repeated in the porch and then is repeated over the garage. Has a nice porch that faces the street, has steps and a little sidewalk coming out, very much in line with what we strive for in our design review guidelines. And then that'll be changed. It'll be changed so that the front entrance to the house will not really be there. It'll be more from the garage side,
No,
which
it'll be on the
isn't necessarily
garden
a pardon?
It's on the garden side.
The garden side?
Yes.
Okay.
It's on the west.
The main entrance will be, yeah. And then then I have the same problems that you've been talking about, is the kind of squash look of the first floor and the extra height and bulk of the second floor somewhat, the change in styles of windows from the sort of craftsman style scowl, I guess it's a craftsman porch maybe in the style, to the tiled front. So I just think that the front facade is confusing and that it isn't as good in some respects as what's there now, although what's there now isn't in very good condition. But design-wise, what's there now is more attractive to me, than what we have. And I would like to get some suggestions in how to tie the design better with the part, that front facade is being kept, being raised, becoming more predominant. And I'm looking at just some of the design details, maybe in the bay windows or in whether there is a bay, I think it is.
No,
And
it's only
then
a plant
and where
on.
the door is and where the lanterns are and the windows in the front. I don't necessarily have a problem with the 3-foot wall and the gate there. But it isn't, to me, it isn't integrated very well with the style of the house, of the old house that's being raised up and made more dominant. And I don't know quite how to, I'm hoping that you architects might come up with some suggestions that be somewhat responsive to my concerns there and might make for a better looking sort of front of the front of the home that looks a little bit more integrated in style. So any suggestions and thought? I think that Stacy's idea of removing or the sort of apparent division between the first and second floor, moving that up would help a lot. I think that would be help the proportions.
Just one comment, why couldn't you have the scalloped detail on the deck on top of the garage?
Well, based on the height of it, because it drops down, it doesn't meet code. The openings, that shape.
So you're gonna cut it and build on top of it to raise the 42 inches?
No, it doesn't really, it's very small, it's only 2 feet or
Yeah,
something.
you're gonna add on to it to raise it, to get the 42 inches.
Right, we would just remove it and put on a new parapet.
So I think the
The
question
wall.
is, why not copy that detail?
Yeah.
Well, the detail itself, I'm happy to do it. It just creates a very tall center section on the wall. So it creates where it drops down, where it scallops down. So those valleys go below code. This is like, it's 6 feet or something to get that design, to get that peak. I'm happy to draft it out, but that's how it, when we just had lifted it, it made it
And the 6 feet
very awkward.
would obscure views, or it just wouldn't look good, or?
Yeah, it looked odd. It looked odd from inside the deck looking out at this. It was like you had a jack-o'-lantern on the top of your deck. So we thought, well, we'll just streamline it, because when we had spoken to Ann, something to break the front yard up and put a privacy wall, and which worked for the client with her disabilities, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, okay, well, let's just clean that up and try and tie things together and get rid of the issues. Now, really, maybe if I get rid of the top mansard altogether and just go with the angled roof and change it into a modern look and not try to keep that facade when we do phase 2 would be more appealing.
Yeah, that's not gonna work.
Don't like that.
No.
Okay,
I think it's actually interesting. The line between the garage and the house
yeah.
is not there. That garage is flush with the outside of the house,
Correct.
so there's no line there. I think there's some excellent examples around where they put the garage up and the
Well,
deck is
actually, I think
pulled
it's
back.
is it set back?
No, according to your drawings, it's not set back. So there's a number of houses that have that
Right,
portion of
right.
the garage pulled back, and there's actually a nicer roof over that.
Set the garage back?
Set the deck railed back.
Uh-huh,
Put a sloped roof there with tile on it,
sure, break it up.
breaks that up. And it's done in Albany in a number of homes that looks very attractive.
Sure, that's a perfect idea.
I mean, I'm just, fishing here, but
Yeah.
I think that might help with that. Because actually kind of
Explain,
flattens the facade the way it is now.
explain the front there for me, will you? Behind the gate, then there's that row of, say, 4-foot square windows.
This is over the kitchen area.
That's over the kitchen area. What's
Yeah.
below that?
So in here,
Yeah,
this is just
Countertops.
stucco.
that's stucco.
This is just, it's open, the idea was we would put plantings in there, probably tall fescue, you know, something that breaks it up.
Yeah. And the front door is where?
The front door is right here on this side.
Into the kitchen?
Around
Yeah,
the
it's a set
side.
of- It's a set of French doors that goes to the side patio.
It's
Into the
around the
kitchen?
side there.
Yeah, okay. I was wondering that too.
And then,
So that's, go ahead.
so how the primary access would be through the garage then?
No, primary access is still, I mean, yes, there is an entrance from the garage,
Uh-huh.
but the primary access is still across here and to the side.
From the driveway,
Yeah, or from, you know, if you're
from
having
there.
guests, from here to a walkway. to the
and,
side.
and why do you not want to have a front door in the front?
One, it didn't work with the layout, but the biggest priority is that the client wanted to have her front door on the side of the house so that sometimes she's not able to come and go out of her dwelling quickly. And so this gives her a sense of coming around and not being exposed while she's trying to deal with
Yeah.
her situation. That was the,
That's a bit tough because Albany's design review guidelines, I don't know if you had a chance to look at them, but they specifically address that and
I did, I talked to Ann
Yeah.
about this.
Yeah.
And so that's why we thought, well, if we came up with something that gave the appearance from the street that there, you know, was a front centered door and an entrance, and to try and accommodate that from a visual standpoint.
it's interesting because she's having to go even further to get to the front door once you park.
So it would be a level end path, she would just roll her chair.
Yeah.
It's just different than standing in front, trying to get out of your chair, open your door. It just felt more
No, I
private,
understand.
yeah.
It makes the house feel really closed off from the street, that there's no door. We've had this conversation with other projects where, you know, if it's all garage and the house steps down, then you end up with, when you're walking down the street, with a relationship to a garage door, and it's a little bit unfriendly. And in this case, it kind of does the same thing. The house is kind of turning its back a little bit on the street. And I'm just curious if you would consider putting a door on the front.
An additional door.
I'll speak to the owner.
Or an additional door.
Here's a suggestion, and I hope, and I don't really want to sit here and redesign it, but
Right.
there's a very famous Midwest architect named Frank Lloyd Wright who would set his entrances on the side of the house, so people would have to go find them. And in this situation, it's a perfect situation where you could have a small entry, rather than coming in and enter the kitchen, you could have a small entry on the side there. You got room on that side of the property. So you actually come up into a vestibule and then into the kitchen. So that gives you at least a front door statement that it's out there.
So you're suggesting that a vestibule go in this side?
Right.
So that, absolutely, it's possible. It's her only, because she has a funny lot, that is her only yard.
That's her only yard, yeah. I know.
And so the idea was to try and put all the access for her into her side yard where it was sunny and where her enjoyment with the property would be.
Well, that extra overhang from the second floor and the extra beam there adds a little bit to that. I mean, that is kind of a porch.
Just
over-
covers her while she's getting in the house, yeah.
Porch over an entrance, yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It incorporates some of that overhang into to the vestibule.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's not, you got 10 feet there. If you add another 2 feet onto this, you got about 3 feet hanging over. That's 5 feet. That's enough to get a door in with a small vestibule into the side of the house. Then it creates a garden behind that. And it actually gives you a private garden behind that. But I think what I'm hearing is it's kind of an awkward trip to try to find the front door. I understand your reasons. I don't really, I'm not against what you're doing. I'm just offering a suggestion from what I've heard some of the other commissioners are talking about. a solution that would work and it would encroach less and possibly make life a little bit easier, where you have a closed vestibule that you can come up to before you enter the house that's covered and out of the rain.
So are you making a suggestion that it comes forward in this area?
No,
in the
no,
front
on the side of the house.
So you're suggesting to build it here?
Right.
Oh, what's the advantage there? I don't.
The door, then the opening's out towards the street.
You can
It
put a door
creates a
in the front.
vestibule that's got, it's out of the rain.
It is, however, at that point, though, she does have a privacy fence, so you wouldn't even see it. You look at the shrubberies at the front of the house.
Funny thing about the privacy fence, we don't allow fences that large in the front.
We
So-
didn't do it, it is existing.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
So you want it gone.
probably, they don't allow them. Sorry.
Good to know.
Well, I'm wondering if, now that we've had some extensive discussion, if maybe the commission wants to continue this pending some revisions to be submitted, or alternatively take action with conditions.
I think there's enough here that we probably want to see it back here, but I think what I want to leave you with is the fact that you're very close. I think there's some tweaking here that needs to be done. I think in concept, it's fine. I think I can live with the height.
But I just want to go back to what Commissioner Osmond said. I mean, what do the commissioners and the applicant think about having a front door? You know, I'm hearing a lot of feedback about redesigning the front in general. So what if you put a front door that you didn't use and you kept it all the same, but you still had that front door, and so it felt like there was a front door to the property, and there was a front door to the property in the front, but you also had your access on the side.
There's no way it's going to work with this footprint. I mean, with
You don't
the
think so?
interior. No.
It's very tiny.
Well, no, it's just that you've got a master bathroom and a kitchen on the front facade.
Oh.
There's no place to put a door
And
in
the, I'll
without
explain
sacrificing.
Oh, okay.
the driving issues for that
Yeah.
is that the sewer lateral is only 3.5 feet. So where we drop, we don't have the drop, so we cannot put
Yeah.
a slab on grade
Yeah, the sewer, right.
Yeah.
anywhere
That's right.
else.
Yeah.
So this is what limits us, so we really take up that whole front of the house
Yeah.
with our essentials.
Yeah, I understand, and that's why I was looking at trying to add something to the side that, instead of having two double doors, you had a nice little porch, which then solves a problem with our design review policy.
It just
And
takes the
gives
light
you-
away out of the
Gives you a
kitchen.
protection when you come home and you're there. And I'm not talking about anything that's that overly large.
No, absolutely, I'm happy to look at it. The other issue, all the sun comes from that side, and so those big lovely doors shine through that hole downstairs. Put a vestibule there, it also is now going to create a dark space in her kitchen.
No, actually, what you do is you move those doors down. You can move those double doors down 4 feet towards the rear, and you're still got the light coming in. It's just, because that's, you know, when you talk about east, north, and south, and west, sun kind of travels. So you'll
That's
still
the
get a lot
south
of-
side. That's the south
Yeah, you'll
side.
still get a lot of light in there. You're just not going to get it at 9 o'clock in the morning. But by noon, you're going to get plenty of light in through those doors. But that's just a suggestion. I'm not
Yeah,
going
yeah.
to push anyway. I mean,
Well,
Well, no, we want your
I'm sorry.
suggestions because she needs to do
Yeah.
the project.
so we need to, I think we should try to figure out how to proceed, and I think we should do our best to give the applicant some guidance if we're going to
I have
continue
two,
it
I
and
have
ask
two
for it
more
to come
very
back.
small comments, and that is, I'm looking at the left side view, and the front facade, while it looks like it has a lot of depth and a lot of stuff going on, it's actually very, very flat. Like the trellis is very thin, so I would make a recommendation to add, if you're gonna put a trellis on, make it a real one, like go ahead and add some depth to it so that it gives you
You're
that.
speaking of the front?
The very
Yes.
front, yeah.
Yes, and that's all I was gonna add, and.
I think
and
that's a good idea.
maybe just think about the door, and I understand why you want the door on the side, and we're not trying to be insensitive to that. I guess what we're trying to do is help the house have a life beyond, you, and it has a relationship to other houses in Albany, and one of those consistent relationships is that the door has visual access from the street, and that there's a porch and there's a consistency of that in the neighborhood, and that you're buying and moving into Albany. That's kind of one of the things where we embrace about this, the quality of this neighborhood. So maybe just think about that.
And I would like to add that I would, because of the size of the lot, I could support that front wall here that you've got, that you articulate that wall in a way that you have some type of trellis over it, that gives then depth to the front.
You're saying attach the trellis all the way across the front?
I would think
To
if
the
you.
3-foot wall in the front, that's what you're
You could do a
suggesting?
trellis, and then you could have an entry trellis design. Maybe
You
have it
could.
come in and then have it taller
You
over
could.
the doorway,
It's very flat.
so that it brings the trellis out more. Even though I just said you can't have a screen wall, but you can have some type of trellis articulation out there at the front. And then that gives you depth behind that to whether that trellis goes all the way to the house or goes back 5 feet.
But if we raise this up so that it's at 11 feet, wouldn't that be awfully?
But it's not three-dimensional. What I'm trying to do is bring it out towards the street a little bit. So it's more three-dimensional. So you could play with taking that trellis and bringing it out towards the street.
Yeah, so
I mean, the thing is that small houses like this give you a lot of opportunities to do some nice detailing and proportions. And I think that what we're saying is I think there's some situations where you can start thinking three-dimensionally, not just two-dimensionally.
right, but I will just tell you that this was put in here, one, to break the line, two, to match this overhang, and this was also via to just
Yeah.
still have her yard and have it,
Yeah.
that was the idea.
Yeah.
So,
And
but
that's why I'm
absolutely.
recommending that if you pulled it out, you could have your bougainvillea out in the front and in the back. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I don't think trellises cost that much.
You're already paying for it, we're just saying make it a little deeper. So it gives you some relief on your facade, it's just a little bit long, cut.
Well, true. So.
It's true.
Do you want to start talking about the 9.5-foot ceilings? That's totally expensive because, you know what? This is what I don't understand. Building materials do not come in 9.5-foot high studs. So you're going to be taking every piece of those studs, putting them up there and cutting them.
Yeah.
So, right. Right, and I'm looking at, well, okay, you're not my client, so I won't make recommendations, but the situation is that we feel the front facade is too flat and not proportioned. We've thrown out a lot of discussions, some of them, yes, some of them do cost, some of them don't cost as much. So I think that, like, as I mentioned, personally, I'm in favor of the project with some tweaking. And I don't mean that expensive tweaking. I think there's some proportional issues that need to be resolved.
Well, I hope we've given you enough guidance that you can work with. Let's see, there's no one else in the audience who wants to speak on this item, is that right? I think so, okay. All right, so commissioners, I guess we should make a motion. We're going to continue this, or?
So I'll move to continue this item.
Okay.
Can we move it to continue to a date certain?
You want
Do
to
we
do
have a
that,
date, or do we have to say date
Well,
uncertain?
I would actually ask the applicant, time estimate of how long you think revisions would take.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, I think I need to come in and have a conversation with you because
Okay.
there were so many things that were discussed
Right,
Okay.
I
that
agree.
I personally don't have a clear understanding of really what will get approved. I mean, I do in general,
Yeah.
but between my client and you guys, I probably just need to come in and see you, and then I can give you that
Yeah,
information.
I think we've given you a problem. I agree. I don't think our guidance has been crystal clear at all. And I think it's a hard one for us because you're asking us for a real kind of a hybrid sort of design that in many respects goes against our design review guidelines, where we are looking at a house that it very much conforms. we also recognize you have a very difficult lot, and it's very unique to have absolutely no backyard. None of us object to your wanting to have a roof a porch over the garage that's accessible, because.
But just to try to give the applicant and staff some clarity about what consensus I've heard, is that I've heard that the front door not being at the street is problematic. It's an unfriendly gesture, if you will. And I've heard that in general, the dimensions of the front facade are not working for the commissioners.
Fair.
And so I think we can be clear about that. I mean, we can't be clear about exactly what you have to do to fix that, but you are the architect, so.
Right.
Here's a suggestion that, again, not trying to, I don't understand how you're going to do this, but you're going to lift part of the house and leave the garage there. Seems like I would be thinking about taking the garage down when I lift the house and either putting a car pad out there and converting some of that into backyard landscape area, if that's what's important to you.
Yeah, it's not necessary to raise.
Well, I mean,
You just cut the garage and lift it.
yeah, you're going to have to cut it down. Or you cut because there's going to be, the studs are going to be, the joists are going to be sitting on top of the plates.
Yeah,
So when
no,
you
it
take that
actually.
up, those studs, those joists are going to have to be supported or go away.
Yeah,
See, I've lived in a couple houses. I know
Yeah.
what has to be done.
yeah, we were going to shore the inside of the garage and just cut it off and then lift
Okay.
the house.
And then reattach it.
Correct.
I think maybe in the interest of time, should we move forward?
Yeah,
Okay.
there's suggestions. I also will offer that you can do some quick sketches, send it to us, and we could give you feedback.
I move to continue this item, unless you want to say anything more.
Is there a second?
To guess a date uncertain. Item, just to be clear, item PA 13084, 638 Evelyn.
Okay. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
All right. All right. The item's been continued, and you can certainly work with staff, and we'll look forward to seeing some revisions. You bet. All right.
It's in the staff.
The next item on our agenda
You want the EMF report?
is, am I right here? Is it the, yeah, we've just done 638 Evelyn, so the next item is 423 San Pablo, the Verizon monopole and application for replacement antennas. All right, staff report?
Yeah, the applicant has filed for a zoning clearance for an existing Verizon wireless facility located on the monopole at 423 San Pablo Avenue. The scope of work includes the removal and replacement of 4 panel antennas and related cables on the existing monopole. The new antennas are comparable in size to the existing antennas. Previously, Crown Castle, on behalf of Verizon Wireless, had filed for a building permit application to remove and replace antennas at this location. The application request was presented to the Planning Commission in July of 2011, at which time the Commission denied the request. The decision was appealed to the City Council, who later upheld the Commission's decision. Consequently, litigation was filed against the City of Albany in federal court in November of 2011. Sometime after, in July of 2012, a settlement agreement between the City of Albany and Crown Castle was executed, and the lawsuit was settled. As part of that agreement, Verizon reapplied for the antenna replacement under new federal regulations contained in Section 6409 of the Middle Class Tax Relief Act of 2012. As part of that settlement agreement, it was agreed by both parties that the Planning and Zoning Commission would review the application through the zoning clearance process. Additionally, a special condition was included as part of the agreement, which required documentation of the structural integrity of the pole to be submitted at the time of building permit. The zoning clearance was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission on July 24th of 2012. Through the building permit process, staff retained outside engineers to review the structural reports that were provided. Bore samples were taken and subsequent reports were prepared, and it was concluded that the pole was structurally sound. The antennas were replaced and the building permit was finalized in November of 2012. Before you this evening is the latest application seeking to replace the existing Verizon antennas. The existing antennas are 50.9 inches in height, project out to 5.2 inches, and are 10.5 inches in width. And so this is that detail on the screen. The proposed antennas, which are just below that, are remain 50.9 inches in length. It projects out 7.1 inches, and it's 11.9 inches in width. We had forwarded the application to our third-party consultant, who gave us a couple conditions. Within the EMF report on pages 10 through 14, there are signage details that are provided that the applicant has agreed to put signage in place. And we've also required that there be a sign on the monopole at the height of the neighboring residential structure. One thing to note, last summer, staff did go out with a third-party consultant to take RF measurements to determine if there was a compliance issue. We measured from the ground, and our consultant concluded that there wasn't an exposure issue from that level. One thing he did note, though, was the need to get proper signage in place. And so with this zoning clearance application, we're moving forward with that. That concludes my presentation. I do have a couple speaker cards, and I know the applicant is present this evening.
Okay, good, thank you. I'd like to hear now from the applicant, I think first, and then we'll open the public hearing. So, do you have a presentation, or we have some questions for you?
Hello, my name is Gary Gotchberg. I
Okay.
represent Crown Castle on behalf of Verizon. I don't have a presentation. I commend Ms. Hirsch for writing a very thorough staff report, and pretty much agree with her findings and recommendations, and I'd be happy to answer any questions for you.
Okay.
Must be my day for not being clear on things, but what's the relationship between Crown Castle and Verizon?
Yeah.
You own the pole, you're leasing them?
Exactly.
Okay.
Crown's an infrastructure provider. We typically own the asset itself, the tower, and sublease space to the customers. In most cases, they're one of the 4 major carriers.
So you owned, you're the owner of the tower then?
Yeah, and I don't want to misrepresent, not in all cases. I mean, we have deals for long-term leases for 99 years, perpetual easements, we own property. We, for the most part, we lease, space, ground space, and then we own the tower, the asset itself.
Yeah.
Now, we have a letter in the record from one of your neighbors out over there talking about access easement for the maintenance vehicles and the parking, and it is a very complex kind of arrangement. Are you aware of that, and are you aware of the problems that have been associated with that? And it must be your people who are getting in their way, and do you have a way of managing that?
We do, and I was made aware of this letter today by Ms. Hirsch and provided it to me, and we have, as of today, had our property team reach out to this individual here and discuss what we could do to remedy and resolve the situation. I don't think it's extremely complex. I mean, the vehicles and the maintenance that takes place out there is not, in particular, Crown. It's typically our customers that have to go out and do what I would consider very semi-regular maintenance.
So that would be Verizon then?
Verizon or Metro, and they have rights to go up and do regular maintenance. I got to say, in my time in the industry, I can't imagine that either customer goes out there more than once a month, if that. So I don't think that this is a persistent problem. It's something that is happening consistently all the time. I do think that from what I see here, there was an incident a couple weeks ago where there was some maintenance done. And from what I understand, when they do maintenance, they come out with some large trucks and heavy equipment, and they back up to as close as they can, obviously, to get the equipment out. And what they should be doing is getting their equipment out and then moving their trucks to a designated parking space that's a little further down. And I can say that I think that that is the issue, and that's not taking place. I think that the crews that are going out there to do maintenance, you know, it's more convenient for them to leave their truck open with their tool sets and everything that's in the truck to go at the end of the gate and get it. And what we need to do is advise them that they need to abide by the agreement, unload their equipment, and move their trucks. So we think it's definitely something that is resolvable, and we're in the process of working with this tenant to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
And do you have mechanisms in place to do that? So you have two providers that are accessing it, so two different crews, and then you're and your own Crown Castle folks probably from time to time. How do you communicate that between you in this hearing and people who are actually going to be out in the field doing that?
As we were discussing about RF signage, I think that we're going to actually put up at least the initial idea that I've gotten from my property specialist who has discussed this with the tenant, that maybe specific signage directing them that they need to do so. Also potentially putting in some markers near the gate of the facility that says no parking. You know, so there's certain remedies that they're looking into right now, and from what I was told today by my property specialist, the individual that Patricia Doucette, I'm not sure if I'm saying her name correctly, she was at least initially pleased with what his recommendations were, and they were on the same page to resolve the situation, and I think that we can make sure that it doesn't happen in the future.
Okay. Any other questions?
Well, actually, where I was going with this, when I was questioning them, was, did you purchase this pole?
What?
This particular pole, you know, honestly, I couldn't tell you that offhand. I mean, there's such a variety of different agreements that we have as far as the way that we purchase the assets or lease them back. A lot of the times we will, you know, purchase the pole itself and then lease it back, the rights to the, you know, so it can be complex. Like I said, there are perpetual easements in place. Sometimes we own the land itself.
Well, I'm just interested in the pole. Who installed it? How do they install it?
The pole was installed by GTE. I think it's in the report here many, many years ago.
Yeah.
From what I understand, it was approved by the PUC at the time. It was that long ago. It is part of a large portfolio that we purchased, you know, from GTE, now Verizon, many, many years ago. I can find out that information for you and the details of how that you know, transaction worked. It would not be a problem if you would like to provide that.
It's probably not necessary if we can't trace back who did it.
Anyone else have questions?
No.
Okay, that's good for right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. All right, I'd like to open up the public hearing then. Anyone who'd like to come forward and address the commission on this issue, please do so.
2 speaker cards.
Okay.
Thea Kinthea and Ed Fields.
Yeah, Ed Fields again. I've asked Ann if she could bring up part of the packet. Okay. So, a couple of things. This shows the roof peak at 30 feet. I think you'll find that the top plate is probably at about 30 or 32 feet, and the roof is probably closer to 40 feet. Does that make any difference? This is measured from the base of the monopole.
Yeah.
So you'll find that the peak of the roof is almost in line with the bottom of the Metro PCS antennas. What is the proposed down tilt of the antennas? And what is the down tilt that was assumed for the simulations? Very often the antennas are tilted down 4 or 6 degrees.
Okay.
How will that affect this? You have antennas with an equivalent isotropic radiated power of 8,855 watts, okay? And this blue outline is 100% of the maximum allowable public exposure limit. So while this is all green, this may be 90% or 95%, and out here, you have 5% of the maximum public exposure level. There are balconies here. You guys have all seen this property.
Yeah.
Should. So there's some serious questions. The letter from the owners of the building adjacent asked for actual measurements to be taken when this is installed, if it's approved, and that really what the city should do is work to relocate these antennas somewhere else where they're not so close to residences. The public notice and the staff report are not exactly right. We're not removing and replacing 4 antennas and 4 coaxial cables. We're removing and replacing 4 antennas, and we're adding 4 coaxial cables, and we're adding 2 tower-mounted amplifiers. And the reason we're adding those cables is because the two of the new antennas will be dual-band antennas, 2 antennas in one, where currently you have a single-band antenna. And that accounts for a lot of the extra power. I think that's pretty much what I want to say about that. This is not a good place for antennas, right next to a residential structure, and it's not a good place to add additional antennas built into the antennas. Actually, 2 of the new antennas are a couple inches taller than what's shown as the existing antenna. We won't even worry about that. The only other thing I have to say has nothing to do with this. But if you look in your packet and you look at view 1 of the photo simulations, you will see that Goodyear has streamers of pennants running from the Goodyear to a city light pole. These are illegal in Albany. They have illegal signage. Since you have been presented with a picture of this, perhaps you could address this issue with staff. I have attempted to address this issue with staff a long time ago, the illegal signage at Goodyear.
Could you repeat that again? I just pulled up the image and I...
Yeah, there are pennants. There are pennants. If you look at view 1 of the photo simulation, those pennants are illegal. There used to be a whole lot more of them. They're on canes. There is illegal signage on Canes Avenue, which is across the street residential neighborhood is staring at pennants and signs, endless signs. I mean, we like Goodyear, but let's not go too far overboard. Thank you.
Ed, do you think that the city has the possibility of relocating this tower? How do we do it without buying it?
No, I don't mean relocating, finding another place or working with Crown Castle and Verizon and Metro PCS to find a better location. It's not a simple question.
Yeah.
But this is not an ideal location. It's a non-conforming monopole. It way exceeds the height limit.
It's built before we had regulations.
Yes, no, I'm just saying, but it is non-conforming.
It's grandfathered in there.
Yes, we've been through the issue about upgrading non-conforming uses, and the owners, I think the owners really, in their letter to you, said what I think the key point is we should try to do something about this. I mean, I think, if you approve this, measurements need to be taken on the roof. I mean, the question that people are going to ask you is, why does there need to be signage visible from the roof if it's safe to live up there 24 hours a day?
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what that green means. It's safe to live there 24 hours a day, even though it might be 90% of the FCC limit, exposure limit, right, for the public.
No, it's okay. I see.
Right, the edge of the blue outline.
The green is anything from 5% to 90%.
Yeah, from 5% out there to 100% of the general public exposure limit at the outline of the blue.
That's the public limit.
Right.
That's the range, yeah.
Well, I think that needs to be measured.
Certainly 5% is way below, even if it's in the green, even up to the blue, it's still permissible for public exposure.
But according to the FCC,
Right.
yes,
That's
it
right.
is.
Yeah.
But if I guess my point is, when we've gotten these reports from Hammett and Edison before, a different outside third party, and they've given a number. Again, this is a simulation based on information given from Verizon, right? It needs to be measured. But what Hammett and Edison will say is, we estimate that at the closest neighboring residence, you will get 5% of the FCC limit, or 7%, based on worst-case assumptions.
Yeah.
In this case, you're looking at something where there's maybe a balcony here and a roof here.
Right.
Okay?
Ed,
That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
So
I
you're-
appreciate what
yeah,
you're
okay.
saying, but you know what? Sometimes you're so misleading. If you look at the photographs
Yeah.
and the ridge versus the antenna, the bottom of the antenna, there's a good 8 to 10 feet.
Between the bottom of the Metro PCS antennas?
Take a look at the photographs.
I was out there today looking at it.
Take a look at the photographs.
I was out there too.
I understand that, but you know, this is a
Well,
public hearing.
can I
Stop,
see,
stop,
well, I don't know if you want to take the time
There's
to.
picture 2 of their
Well, I
simulation.
can't see it.
Go on the
I
roof
can't
to
see
figure
it.
it out.
I mean, can
I'm
you,
just saying, you know, saying.
can I see your photograph
Thanks,
for one
thanks,
second?
Ed.
Saying they're the same level.
You're asking me to look at it.
Saying these are the same level, that and that.
This,
You see what I'm saying? There's a substantial difference between the top of that roof.
yeah.
Okay, I know, but I'm saying don't, I just, sometimes it's,
I estimated very carefully that I thought the plate was at about 30 feet.
yeah, you can
There's a
see,
photograph there, too.
I'm just saying it's,
Can we move on? Can we move on,
It's
please?
pretty much
Can
like
we
the
move
way
on?
the diagram was drawn,
Right.
so,
Can we
okay.
move on?
let's move
All
on.
right, all right. Next speaker, yeah, Ann?
Thea Kinthea and Michael Doucette.
Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners. I apologize for my interruption. I have lived in Albany since 1960. I have been across the street from the dwelling of Sonny Kim and the apartment that is right next to that pole. And I can tell you with all sincerity that the distance I'm standing from you to you is the distance from that pole to the balcony.
There's no disputing that.
All right?
Yeah.
And, sir, I don't know if you'd like to live that close to that
Well,
antenna.
Can you address us? Not-
Well, he's a human here, too,
Yeah.
and I do believe he has a good heart. And I know that he is also here to represent his interest, but we are all here as one. And I think there needs to be a voice here. I listened to the summary, and I'm trying to be calm. I listened to the summary that described that, oh, this is the size, as though technology was dictated by the size. We all know that with the advance of technology, you can have something much more potent in a smaller size. So size is irrelevant. And not only is it not just the size, it's that we've doubled the equipment. Now, originally, I congratulate the city for trying to block Verizon. I do congratulate them for trying to do that. And we all know that the pole is outside of the standards of the city, and that it got grandfathered in, and then the city courageously tried to stop them. And Horizon, who says they care about the well-being of the people they're trying to serve, sues our city. And now we are here at a crossroads where the commissioners at that time had to buckle in, and now we're at another crossroads. And I'm asking you, we have elected you to protect us, to represent us. We are the people that lives here. I represent myself, the Mastroiannis who live at 413, Robert Gallagher who lives at 419, and Sonny Kim and their whole building and all those families there. I live right across the street from this. I have lived here for 56 years, 54 years. Okay, this is my town. And it makes me really sad to think that our commissioners are going to be swayed by a whitewashed description of what this thing is. We all know what this thing is. It's not just about size. and numbers are not just about numbers. If I can look you in the eye from here and I can see closely your expression, I can tell you those people that are standing on their balcony and they go out, they can look at that tower and wondering, wow, wow. And why would the city, having hired a company to go out there and take the RF emissions, I don't understand. And this company supplies data that is taken from the ground, not from the balcony where the people are living. It's taken from the ground. Why, please, did the city not go to them and say, you need to go back there and do your job correctly? I don't understand that. You are our officials. You're here to protect us. You're here to uphold our rights. And it feels like we have no rights in our own city. It makes me really sad.
Okay, thank you.
That's it.
Next speaker?
I'm Michael Doucette, and I'm the owner of the property next door, not a tenant. And there already is some signage right at the entrance to that parking lot stating that this is private parking and that sort of thing. And there's also a no parking sign by the gate where the workers, I guess I should be addressing you, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Thank you.
where the workers park their trucks and access the tower and that sort of thing. So, this still needs to be kind of worked out as far as, complying with the easement as it stands. Again, I don't know if this is the correct vehicle to present this, or if I should just be talking with the Crown Castle and dealing with them on a personal level. But there still are some issues, and they really haven't been addressed to our satisfaction yet.
Okay.
That's all.
Well, I'll say a couple things. We did get your letter, and they have your letter. And I guess because they're here, they gave you a call, and they're open to that. And I read the easement and was very confused by it. It's old. It's hard to figure out who owns what. Hard to figure out where those 4 parking spaces are. Today I was there, and I did talk to your wife about that. And she told me that you've been talking to a land use attorney, and that's the right way to go. Right. And you should talk to Crown Castle, and they should receive your comments and do their best to manage their crews so that the maintenance of that tower does not disrupt you and your employees and your customers. That just shouldn't happen. And that's about all we can do. Sure. And you're doing the right thing to hire a land use attorney and keep on them, because that might be what it takes. But it's a really a legal question. It's a complicated easement. You do have rights that draw from that. They have rights that draw from that. And I think you've made the right step. It's unfortunate you have to do that, but I think you have. And it isn't really very relevant to the decision we have in front of us.
I didn't think it was, but
replacing, whether they can continue operation and replace the antennas with the new ones. So,
right.
Okay.
Okay.
But thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other speaker cards? Anyone else like to address the commission on this issue? All right. Seeing no one, I'll bring it back to the commission for thoughts and action. So I noticed that this is
I'd like to share my thoughts first.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a person in this room that would want to see that tower remain if we could relocate it. Unfortunately, we're powerless. And unfortunately, if you want a protection, you need to go higher. We are directed by the federal government. We are directed by the state government on what we can do and what we can't do as far as cell towers. So we're very limited here. We can try to do something. I'll guarantee you it'll be in court, and City of Albany will be spending tens of thousands of dollars defending a lawsuit that we're going to lose. All because all the power has really been taken away from the city levels in this situation. Because And I understand why, because there were cities making decisions all across the board and nothing was cohesive across the state or the land. So the federal government stepped in and said, this is what you can do and this is what you can't do. Nobody, and why I was asking about the polls, nobody knows when it went up, how it went up. It didn't go up with permits. It got grandfathered in because, again, threats of lawsuits. Albany's not afraid to take on people, obviously, because we did this the first time. But we're hitting our heads against the wall here until the federal government changes their decision, allowing us local governments to take more control over these situations. So we're kind of handicapped here about what we can do and what we can't do, and it bothers me. I don't like that pole. We would never allow that pole in the city now. I understand it went up. I understand there's balconies right next to it, and I agree, measurements should be taken from the balconies. And then we can make some educated decisions, but even if measurements are taken off those balconies, there's nothing this body can do about it. Unfortunately, as much as we'd like to, we're just handcuffed here on our decision-making policy. So I just want to, there's frustration up here also about this situation. A major amount of frustration. There has been for years on the commission about that pole. So
okay.
I'm just, I understand what you're saying from the neighbor's point of view. And I would hope, and I know it's almost impossible, that we could find another location for this pole that's more appropriate. I would like to see the possibility of the city, I hate to put this burden, but where we could locate this pole in a different location is more acceptable to both Verizon, Metro PC. We've got two
top
different,
of the high school.
Yeah, we got two different groups here. Well, if we could, I would. There's a lot of money to be made by the high school putting up there, but again, then there's one on top of St. Mary's High School.
I know.
So if we could, we're not, again, the city is not the school district.
It's the tallest building around, but anyway,
Right.
that's an
that
aside.
in the theater,
That's an aside,
but yeah, I would hope in the future we could come to some type of location that might be appropriate and approach the two companies. I'm not holding out a lot of hope, but we could approach the two companies and say, we've got a better location and we can help you out through expediting permitting through this to move over. One of the questions I did have for you, because of the increase in capacity of these antennas, are you increasing the power there? Generators and any type of electrical increase, panels? In other words, is there anything on the ground that's being increased going along with the antennas?
There's no groundwork proposed at all. It's just strictly an antenna swap.
Okay, so you're using the existing power you have to the site?
That's correct.
Okay.
We had the impression from Ed Fields that this would be a lot more powerful antenna, is that true, or it's just a different kind of technology, or are you trying to reach farther with it?
Different kind of technology. I'm not really the technology, expert, and I probably couldn't answer specifically what the power is for each antenna. I know that a lot of these upgrades that are consistently happening, not only with Verizon, but all the carriers, are capacity, and it's capacity issues. Everybody's using their phone
for smartphones.
Smartphones are basically,
Wi-Fi.
you're walking around a computer in your pocket. So they're just trying to keep up with the consumer demand and trying to come up with ways to get more capacity, and swapping out the antennas is a way to do it. And once again, I can't really speak to the exact frequency of each antenna. I'm not an expert in that matter.
Okay.
So at Crown, have you guys looked, you must have looked at other locations in the city of Albany for these towers? That would be.
I personally haven't. It's not, we're a pretty big company. I mean, I have this pretty specific job for planning and, representing the company in matters such as this. We have a whole nother department, National Site Development, that could look for new facilities. And, I'm not saying that it's not an option, but it's one of the things about networks that I've even learned over, and I've been in the industry a long time, is that it's really difficult when you have a network set up to move a site.
Anything.
And even, within an eighth of a mile. I used to think that, hey, we got one I found one within a mile, and, the carriers would, or the wireless carriers would, it just, then it shifts their whole network. They might have to move another site or two other sites, and it just really kind of, snowballs into a lot more issues for them. So,
Well, we understand that from other carriers that have been here that, yes, there's moving antenna directions and angles and coverage, but it's not impossible, especially when you're in a location like this where it really does stick out there. And, it is one of the biggest structures around that area. There's the idea of micro technology that people have been pointing to the last couple of years as the direction everybody's going, but we haven't seen it. Microcells. Is there any well, I guess you're not in the engineering department, so you don't know if there's been some direction in that sense for Verizon to break down their cell towers and go more locally.
well, I really, unfortunately, I couldn't answer that, but I do know that, what they call DAS, which is distributed antenna systems, which are smaller, smaller but larger amounts of antennas has been proposed in other cities, and to a certain extent it works, but it also, creates a lot of feedback from local residents and negative feedback, because they're usually on power poles, and like I said, there's a lot more of them. So, and for the most part, the larger facilities work off those smaller ones. So you still need the larger ones. It's just the smaller ones fill in the gaps where they don't have as good a coverage, and where your phone tends to drop calls. So even though on the big picture, it seems like that they could transfer everything to DAS. I'm not sure, and I'm not an expert in this matter, but I don't think it really works that way. I think it's really the DAS kind of feeds off the larger towers to increase capacity and also help coverage. That's my general understanding of it, and once again, I'm not an expert, so.
Yeah, I guess unfortunately
What
we're
about, and this could just be, I'm just throwing this out there. Clearly, this isn't an ideal location, but what if there was this proposal just to shift it away from the residential building towards the front of the lot on the building? I mean, would we be willing to, what? We'll help them shift it forward. It would be closer to San Pablo. It would be further away from the residents. I mean, I'm just saying that it wouldn't be right on top of the residents, then it would be more in the commercial spot. I don't know.
So, well, the honest truth, we don't know whether there's any issue about the residents or not. And in fact, what we know from the drawings we have is that there's not. This is what we're told.
Right.
So, we don't, and that's what we have to go by. It's the first thing I looked at is, are they exceeding the standards? And no, they're in below 5% zone, the residential building is. So it may not be an issue at all. And we don't know that. And the antennas don't run at full power all the time, and the modeling assumptions make certain assumptions. So, Ed had raised the question about whether the antennas aim down or not.
Tilted.
Our drawing shows it being aimed straight, sort of parallel to the ground. And is that probably accurate, or do you think that the people that did our consultants have the right information when they put this modeling together?
I believe so. I mean, once again, I'm not an expert in RF as far as the tilt goes, but we did supply our original RF report, and it was deemed to be not as comprehensive as it needed to be by your third-party consultant, and we provided one specifically answering the questions that consultant, determined that we needed to answer. So all I can say is that from that perspective, as far as the frequencies at the rooftop and other, I can't remember specifically what the the requirements were to deem the application complete, but we provided that report.
Okay.
And third-party consultant who was hired by the city signed off on it. So
Okay.
all I can say is that if your consultant signed off on it, I would imagine
And
it's...
we're relying on that
Yeah.
report for our decision, so, okay.
I understand.
All right, thank you. Any other questions?
Just for our staff,
Go ahead.
what would it take to go back out there and measure off the decks?
A couple of things. First of all, we did last July bring our third-party consultant, independent consultant, Pete Krachuka, out, and he took measurements. We went to every site. We spent all day going to every site and taking measurements.
Wait a minute, I'm sorry. He measured in that apartment building?
He did not.
No.
We stayed at the publicly accessible areas.
Yeah, right. Okay.
And in that particular case, the measurements were very, very low. I don't
Yeah.
remember the numbers, but they were very low.
Yeah.
And we asked him whether it would be warranted to take a second measurement inside an apartment or make those arrangements. At that time, in his judgment, he didn't think that that would be warranted based on what he was seeing at the base and at the parking lot, back away from the pole a little ways. So we relied on his professional judgment. We will continue to do that, and if it seems like this continues to be an issue, so we'll try to get that access. It's a bit of work for us to get that access. We can't just go knock on somebody's door with a bunch of equipment.
No.
And for that matter, the landlord can't give us permission either. The permission has to come directly from the tenant. It won't go through the landlord. And we also worked with Pete on the potential of placing poles either on Albany Hill or other locations in the city. And we physically could put a pole on Albany Hill. It could physically work out. He reached out to all the carriers to see if they had any interest in it, and none of them had an interest in it. And I believe it was, as Gary was saying, they have a network and they're already pretty well established in that network, and this just didn't happen to fit in. Having said that, networks change and technologies evolve, and the cell coverage areas are getting smaller with time.
Yep. As
the broadband gets wider, reflect federal law and the modernization of technology, which is right now for us a few months certainly.
All I wanted to say, if you look at the legend on that emission area is greater than 5%.
All right, let's bring it back to commission. A motion. This is all right,
I move that we approve the zoning clearance application, PA 13-0-073 at 423 San Pablo Ave, cables on existing monopole.